Okay, everyone, it's 7 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. You have agenda in front of you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Mitten. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. At this point, I just want to note that we got a pretty large agenda, so I'll do my best to keep us on track so that we can work our way through it. However, it is a long one. We move to item 3. Is there a question period? Any questions about the last month or so? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to item 4, disclosure of interests. Are there any, you've all seen the agenda, are there any items of disclosure of interest on potential tonight? Deputy Mayor? There is a motion on heritage that you had expressed some concern. Yes. So, okay, the Deputy Mayor will recuse himself on the heritage motion coming up later. Okay, thank you. Any others? Nope. Okay. Item 5, minutes. There are 4 packages there. You've had the opportunity to look at them. Council meeting of April 9th on page 3. Councillor Evans moves adoption, seconded by Councillor Mitten. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Minutes are adopted. Thank you. Special meeting closed in camera, May 3rd on page 10. Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Mitten. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Page 11, minutes of May 7th. Moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Councillor Evans. Motion? Question? Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. And one final set on page 14, closed in camera of May the 7th. Moved by Councillor Mitten, seconded by Councillor Tower. Question? All those in favor? Thank you. Minutes are all adopted as circulated. Anybody have any business arising from the minutes? I noted none. Okay. Southeast Regional Services section, Regional Service Commission report was from myself, and there was no meeting as the board decided that there was nothing urgent and that would save money to put it onto the next agenda. So they decided to delay the meeting and put those agenda items on this month's meeting. So there is no formal report from the Regional Services Commission for this month. So that's it for 7.1. We'll move to report on planning, which is on page 15 of your packages. And Ms. Bickford, you wish to address that?
Sure. So tonight has been set for public hearing, so I'll start with, we'll do the public hearing for the Main Street proposal, and then from there, once that portion of the meeting is completed, then I will complete the rest of my report, if that works for council. Or
could we do it the other way around? Is it possible you could do your report first?
Sure. If
yeah, please.
That's not a problem. Okay, so in the month of April, there were 6 permits issued. This brings our year-to-date total at 12 permits for a total construction of value of $10.5 million. This time last year, there were 7 permits issued with a total of $578,000. So the projects this year to date have been much larger in scope than what they were previously. In the month of April, the Southeast Planning Review and Adjustment Committee did not meet, so they did not review any SACFL proposals. Other projects that were worked on during the month were the Southeast Regional Service Commission has moved towards a procedure now where when we are imposing terms and conditions on developments through the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee, as well as through the rezoning process, we will be flagging any of these conditions directly on the property through the Land Gazette in the registry office, and this will make everybody in the public aware of the terms that have been imposed, as well as any future people purchasing property will know up front that they too have to abide by any of those terms and conditions. Sidewalk Cafe notifications have went out, and we've received a number of renewals, which will be reflected in next month's report when they came through. As well, our building inspector and development officer, Sterling Marsh, will be retiring at the end of the month. This is after 26 years of service, so I'm sure we'll miss him, but he will be replaced by a new employee from, he's an employee from one of our other offices, and that's Bill Wright, who will be coming to fill that position. As well, the Sackville office will be relocating as of June 1st to the 112 C Main Street location. So that's just kind of make everybody aware that any planning and development services will be at that new location as of that date. And as well, there is a proposed rezoning request that council will address during the meeting tonight regarding the Bob Edgett Memorial Boxing Club. And this would be that introductory resolution stage, which if council's interested in considering the rezoning request, which is from R1 to institutional, it would permit the construction of the new clubhouse from that location. So council would look at entertaining a resolution later if they're interested in doing that, and that would set the public hearing date for that particular request. And as well, another item that would be coming forward would be second and third reading of bylaw 244E, which is the amendment for the rezoning request for the ambulance service on Robson Avenue in Sackville. So if there's any questions regarding the report.
Councillor Evans.
I just have one easy question. The red flagging of property, the conditions on properties, which I think is a great idea. Was that mandated by the province? Is it something our region decided to do, or is it something that the planning office initiated?
We've been, it's not mandated to do. We have been given the authority, though, to flag these properties through the registry office. So it's completely done within the planning and development offices. It's one of those issues that we've been flagging properties for building permits because often, you know, sometimes people will not call for inspections, especially during a new construction of a house. So in that case, it kind of gives an awareness that there's something that's pending out there, and you should consult with us to make sure there's no outstanding issues. And it's really just kind of that general notification to make sure everybody is aware of. Sometimes people are constructing a house and it would be their first time that they've ever done it, and I can see how that could, might forget some of the steps, so.
On the same question, I presume these are, they're linked to PRAC decisions. That's where it's going to come from, which I think is a good idea because we've seen in the past where some bureaucracies have put flags on for some belief that something might have happened there at some time and you have to disprove it. Yeah. So that's much better that it would be oriented towards a public document that like that. That'll be great. It does run with the land, does it not, in terms of its retention?
So it would stay with the land itself, and the flag, when it's a terms and conditions, or we will also flag rezoning conditions as well that are imposed through bylaw, just so that often the registry office was not registering the bylaws against the actual property. They were placing them in a different section in the registry office. So sometimes people would not be aware of particular conditions that were imposed when they're purchasing properties. So this makes it upfront. It's a general notice that'll say contact us, and then we can pull the file and explain it to them. So it is kind of more of an awareness piece, and just to hopefully address some of those issues where things have gotten missed.
And I wasn't clear to Councillor Evans, this is not being followed by all regional service commissions at this point?
A good portion of them are following a similar practice. We have expanded ours since, like I said, we started originally with just flagging building permits that were underway, and then we would remove the flag once the file is closed on the inspections. But we felt that it was important to flag a number of items. So the primary ones for Sackville would be those particular items. We do have other municipalities that have items like flooding waivers that get registered as well against the property. So there's a number of items that could appear on there.
Any other questions on the planning presentation? No? We're about to move to the second element, which is the public hearing. Just a couple of questions reminding council that we'll have a short presentation in a few minutes, and then we'll open it up for comments from anybody who's interested in the topic. The purpose, of course, is for us to hear those comments and input when we consider whether we're moving ahead with a resolution or 2 or 3 on this. Generally, we do expect in this crowd probably to have quite a few people, so I'll try to keep it to the point so that there are not people coming up and down to talk multiple times. And I think it's just fair to be respectful to everybody. We're hearing what they have to say, so let's just conduct ourselves accordingly. And we'll move over to Ms. Bickford. You have the floor.
Thank you. So I will do the presentation part of the public hearing now. So the proposal that we are hearing tonight is to rezone a portion of the property located on Main Street. You'll see by the heavy blue outline, this is the actual property boundary, and there are 2 zones currently on this property. The red portion is the portion that's institutional. The remainder of the property is zoned mixed use. So this proposal is to change the entire property to the mixed use zone. And the purpose of it is to permit the construction of a multi-unit residential building on the property. Within the municipal plan, there's a number of policies that are involved in this particular request. The first policy that I've highlighted is that the purpose of that town center designation is to be intended to be the focal point of development within the town, and this is where the town would look to encourage mixed-use development as well as residential components of that as well. The second policy I've highlighted is that it's a policy of council to try to strengthen the downtown's image by creating a vibrant center for the community. And they're looking at, you guys are looking at doing this through the promotion of mixed-use development and, again, residential uses within that downtown business district area. As well, we have policies setting targets for housing other than single-family residential to increase by 5% using 2005 as a calendar year. We generally don't, I don't believe we've ever hit this target. It's about 10 multi-unit dwellings or buildings per year. So we haven't quite met that, but that policy is within the plan, and the purpose, of course, is to create a variety of housing options within the town. There's 2 other policies that I've drawn on to just kind of speak a little bit more about high density, and that is, the first is to the policy that proposes to direct multi-unit, medium, and high-density development towards our arterial roads in town. And it specifically names Main Street south of the Trans-Canada Highway, as well as York Street as being 2 of those streets. And another policy that I've thrown in as well is the policy that permits the conversion of institutional structures within that town center designation, so that's your core area of the town, to be able to be converted into medium and high density uses without going through an amendment process to rezone. So it would still be allowed in that case if there was an existing structure to have its institutional zoning, but have a private residential mixed use, private residential high density on it. So within the zoning, as I mentioned earlier, the majority of the property is zoned mixed use. However, the portion in the northeastern corner is zoned institutional. So the purpose is to rezone the whole thing to reflect the remainder of the property, to reflect the whole as mixed use, as well as to permit that development of a multi-unit dwelling. And I just to point out again that that building or that property is within the downtown business district. So on this particular map, you'll see the dashed black line. That would be a portion of the downtown business district. It does extend down to Town Hall, but this is essentially the cutoff of the downtown business district in this area. So in 2012, the applicants did acquire the property from the church, and at that time, the property was zoned institutional to reflect the ownership of the church. So they had applied to rezone it to mixed use to reflect their private ownership at that time. However, the property boundaries were not fully determined, and that's why you see the two particular zones that are appearing on the property today. They were still negotiating the boundaries, and as a result, they came out differently in the end from what was originally thought would be the boundaries. I have overlaid the potential footprint of the building. It's the area identified as red on this particular aerial image to give you a good orientation of the property. The blue box there would be the placement of the newest building that's located on the lot. And of course, the building is visible from York Street as well that you see. The area that's outlined in purple is that portion that's being rezoned. So you'll see half of the building would be within the mixed use zoning and another portion of it is within that area to be rezoned as institutional. So at present time, the multi-unit is approximately 36 units. And there is proposed to be underground parking as part of this development. They've also proposed to do a fitness room and recreation room for the residents as well within the unit or within the building. The units themselves are ranging in size from 960 square feet up to 1,300 square feet. So there's some variety there, but you know that would be tweaked further on in the development process as if things progress. So I have noted the location of the cemetery as well on the site plan. So you'll see from my notes that I have indicated that the closest point of the building is approximately 30 feet from the cemetery, and the nearest grave is approximately 55 feet. It also should be noted that due to the proximity to the cemetery, an archaeologist will have to be on site if excavation occurs on the property. So that is something that's imposed through the Heritage branch. I've also noted the entrances and exit points on the property. So the primary one being on York Street and then the secondary one on Main Street. This is the proposed site plan. Again, I've highlighted in red the area indicated to be rezoned. The other ones are currently existing under their zoning of mixed use. As I've previously stated, policy encourages high density and mixed use development within the downtown business district and on the arterial roads. This particular proposal is capable of meeting the mixed use and downtown business district requirements under the zoning bylaw and under policy as well. And the location of the downtown business district does support the sustainability principles of increasing density in the downtown, walkability to amenities, as well as utilization of existing services within the town. This is the proposed elevations that the building has been changed. You'll see originally it was shown as a 4-story. Now it's looking like a 3-story with a peaked roof on it. So the top one being the south elevation. So this is the portion of the building that would face the parking lot. The dashed line that you see through kind of the middle, that's where that building would be angled. Then again, the west elevation and the eastern elevation. And this would be the elevation facing the pond area or more of the Main Street side of things. This is just some site photos. So this is taken from Main Street across the street and looking back towards it. The building would be in this area. This here is the monuments that are currently located on the property, or the property in front of it. So it would be utilizing this area here and, oops, coming down in towards this. This here is the portion that is being rezoned. This is a view looking east on Main Street. So you'll see the church, it'll be on the opposite side of that. This is just showing York Street, the primary entrance to the property. And this is the Main Street secondary access point to the property as well. This here would be the area where my mouse is going, where the building would be actually located from the parking lot. And this here would be the location approximately of where the entrance into the underground parking is proposed to go. So council is required under the Community Planning Act to seek the views of the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee before enacting or before considering any bylaw amendment regarding zoning. So council has made that request, and on May 9th, the Southeast PRAC has recommended the rezoning request to council. This is the proposed draft bylaw of what is being considered. So essentially, it's just stating that this portion here would be proposed to be rezoned to institutional, or rezoned to mixed use instead of its institutional zoning. And it specifically states in here that it's for the purpose of a multi-unit residential dwelling. So tonight is also a requirement under the Community Planning Act for a council to hold a public hearing to allow the public the opportunity to speak for or against proposals. We have received 8 written comments to date. The full comments have been forwarded on to council, and I have prepared summaries of each of them, which I will present a brief summary to as part of the written component of it, and then I will turn it back to Mayor Heim to open up for the public, if that works. So I'll present the comments in the order that they were received by me, so there's no particular order to them. So the first one was received from Craig Soper, and it was a letter of support. The summary of it is that in general, he likes the proposal. The location and ability for senior independent living within that downtown area was expressed as being important. The second letter was received by Janet Hammock, and it was a letter of support and support on the rezoning and the apartment. Within the letter, she believes the apartment in the downtown core is good for seniors and for the downtown businesses, as well as the land around Main and Bridge Street intersection is considered a beautiful location, and it includes the Waterfowl Park, the Bill Johnstone Park, and the Memorial Park, all within walking distance of the apartment, which was viewed as a positive. I've also received a written letter from Sabine Dietz. She has indicated that she supports focus on infilling lots, density development, and downtown development in the right place. She did raise issues regarding the flood risk mapping that has been adopted and feels that it is weak and that it should be using the 1 in 100 year event in the year 2100 as the town's flood risk. She also indicates that she questions impacts of further development on the hydrology of the area, and that the town should have bylaws regarding tree removal and replacement adopted. A fourth letter was from Linda Trentini. This too was a letter of support. She is a citizen over 55, and she finds it appealing to have a building dedicated to seniors within the town. Sackville lacks a rental variety for all ages, and she favors the central location, low maintenance, and underground parking appeals to her as well. Fifth letter was from Cynthia Spurls, and it was a letter of support. She lived in the Laffords King Street development and felt it was a well-constructed and maintained development. It's important that she has an apartment in walking distance to amenities and the underground parking as well. She feels it's unfortunate that the trees will be removed, but is confident that landscaping will be beautiful on the site when completed. And that Sackville needs buildings for those who choose to stay within the town. The sixth written submission was from Karen Bamford. This was a letter in opposition to the proposal. Within it, the proposed building will destroy the birch grove and attractiveness of the Swan Pond, a feature to tourists and visitors. And she calls for the recognition of the importance of the site to the town's streetscape. The seventh letter was from Mary Ellen Nurse. It was also a letter of opposition, and it was opposition to further development around the cemetery. She points out that the founder of Mount Allison University is buried in the cemetery and feels that it will be surrounded by development. She also feels that the birch trees are fundamental to the Swan Pond and the hill itself, and feels if approved, there should be some requirements to beautify the facades of the buildings on Bridge and Main Street. And the final submission that was received was from Pravin Varma, or Varna, I apologize for the mispronunciation. Varma it is, okay. This was a letter in opposition as well, and to the new apartment, mainly overlooking the pond and in the core of the downtown. So that concludes the written submissions that were received.
Okay, I should note that we've received a few more emails in the last few minutes that we'll get to you as well. So at this point, you have heard the presentation, and we now move to a opportunity for the public to provide comments on what they believe it to be. Our purpose is to hear what your concerns or what you see as assets so that we understand them, and we're able to inform our discussion of how this might or might not proceed. If there are specific questions, Lori in particular will be taking notes that we'll ask her for clarification on of those particular topics that we don't directly address tonight, because we're not prepared for that. This is a hearing, a reception. So with all of that, we open the floor for comments from the public.
Hi.
Please indicate.
It's Erna Duchemin.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for letting us come and speak with you tonight. But I would like to say that I feel the notification about the public hearing is too hard to find on the website. And a simple solution would be to put the notifications on the calendar. I did suggest this on the website comments last week, but it was not done. So that's just, I wanted that put in the minutes, that I think the notifications, especially about public hearings, should be easier to find on the website. Okay. I do not feel that council should rezone the property to build a large 36-unit apartment building. The green space beside the monuments and the Swan Pond keep the area serene and peaceful, and we will lose this beauty once a large building with balconies is situated right beside them. When you have lived in a larger city, you know how special it is to have green space and beauty right in the center of your town. More development will be noticed by the tourists, and in the long term, we may not attract as many people who will want to move here. There are many other locations in Sackville much more suitable for a large seniors building. What most people don't understand is that the building will also come closer to Main Street than they realize, just across from St. Paul's Church. The artist's rendering is very deceiving, showing many trees surrounding the building. Even the notification on the Sackville website is vague. There are no dimensions, and the picture is very small and not detailed. I do appreciate, though, that Lori gave a very good presentation tonight, and I think that's cleared up quite a bit for us, but none of that is on the website. The building is to have an underground parking, but the entrances will be on Main Street and on York Street, where the existing entrances are. This will create more congestion in these two areas. Imagine another 36 cars going in and out of those entrances daily. Although the seniors live downtown, they will still go out to get their groceries and do errands with their cars, because most seniors don't carry heavy groceries such as milk and juice and bags of potatoes that we all have to buy. I know because I walk downtown daily to get my mail, but I always take the car when I'm going to get groceries. Even now, I find York Street very busy with cars lined up, parked on both sides, and that intersection at the lights is always very, very busy. It will get to a point where it'll be easier to shop at Foodland or Amherst or Moncton. And how is this bringing more business in the downtown area? If seniors are thinking this is a prime location for them, they should think twice because they will be sandwiched between two student buildings. It is quite loud downtown most evenings, late into the night when the students are here. I live far enough away and still hear noises in the late evenings when the windows are open. The seniors will have to keep their windows closed and still may be surprised at the noise level. Why would seniors want to battle underground parking? I personally wouldn't feel safe as a senior in an underground parking lot. If you have any experience with underground parking, you know that the lighting is not very good. There are many posts which tend to cause accidents while backing out of parking spots. My last comment is that Town Council is interested in the taxes they will receive, and the province will benefit from these taxes also. But we need to look ahead and think of the worries that this building will cause, such as accidents and problems with traffic flow, and how it will affect the beauty that our tourists and we enjoy now. Why lose this green space in the grove of birch trees for a huge structure that destroys the view for us all? In conclusion, I state again, I do not think that council should rezone this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers for tonight?
Good evening. My name is Meredith Fisher. Thank you for this opportunity, and I would also like to mention how helpful Lori has been in this whole process for us to gather more information. Thank you, Lori. With all due respect, I hope that you, the Town Council of Sackville, and the elected representatives of the people will not approve this rezoning. I do believe that planning and development and developers are really important to the town and into the future. I also believe that jobs and taxes are very important. Of course they are. I also believe that a beautiful, clean, interesting little town such as Sackville needs to protect what makes it special. The future will depend on it. This is what attracts people to want to live here, to visit here, to want to stay here, to work here, or to send their children to school and study here. It's worth preserving that, I feel. And it's no mistake that the stretch of land along East Main Street, Academy Stretch, is a magnificent green space leading into the town center. It follows past what is now endearingly known as the Swan Pond, the Rotary Bridge, the Centennial Monument, the burial ground of Charles Allison, and a magnificent stand of beautiful trees. We're talking at least 30 trees, mostly white birch. Beautiful, beautiful stretch, a little stand right in the center of our town. This sweep of green space was planned, designed for, and paid for by our forefathers in their careful considerations of town planning. It has been the beautiful backdrop of many photographs, paintings, high school graduations, your children and my children. We've all, had photographs taken. You always see people taking photographs of each other. Their family picnics, all events, the Mount Allison graduation. I mean, it's just a very people-centered area. that's just beautiful. We're so lucky to have it. I just can't imagine how a community would support the decimation of this beautiful, iconic, signature space in our town. I couldn't understand how that could happen. Yeah, what more can I say, really? It's a very challenging situation for you, I know that. The land around this particular lot has already been rezoned, and you really, as many of us remember, what a divisive issue that was in our town when that rezoning was done and the magnificent former United Church was taken down. Well, that still lingers. All of those feelings still linger on. And we don't want our town to be divisive. We'd rather it be together, moving into the future in a way that is thoughtful, I would say. Thoughtful is the best word I could probably think of. There are many other issues connected with this project and this proposed rezoning. There's the environmental idea of taking down all those trees. There's the public safety issues of the entry and exit onto the main street and the York Street area. There's the density, the idea of having our town center so dense that what I think we like about Sackville is that it's not dense. You know, if you want to live in a dense place, go and live in Toronto or Shanghai or somewhere where it's really densely populated and densely developed. That's not Sackville. That's not what we like about Sackville. We like that it's not densely populated. There's room obviously in the municipal plan for this to be looked at, I would say. Also, I found the idea of having a building so close to the East Main Street. I think Lori explained it would be 33 feet from the pavement. Because the idea is that's what in the municipal plan is felt that downtown is very close to the street. Well, that's sort of a removed area. There must be a way to revisit that and make it set back from the road. I just find the idea of a very big building in that space really unfortunate for our community. And I know I've been speaking to many people recently, and I know many people who don't feel that they can get up and speak or don't feel for whatever reason that they can actually write you letters. You understand why people feel that way, I'm absolutely positive. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. There's a person coming from behind.
Good evening. My name's Eric Toos-King, and I just need to identify myself with some of the interest in this property. I'm a member of Sackville United Church and was the primary person who negotiated with the Laffords on the selling of this land to them on behalf of Sackville United Church at that time. So I have a strong attachment to the Birches, as was referred to some of the other property. I presently use that parking lot for that's shared between Laffords and Sackville United Church daily pretty well. So I can speak firsthand on a number of things on this. When I worked with Sackville United Church, or on behalf of Sackville United Church to sell this land, we went through a lot of grief, and there's a lot of emotion in our congregation on that issue. But we realized that nothing stays the same, and we needed to move on. And I think that's a little bit of what I think needs to happen in this conversation as well. The birches will not remain in place, I don't think, forever. They're not indigenous to that particular area. Those birches will be gone in 5 to 10, 15 years. Some other form of tree would grow in naturally to that. The zoning is only for a portion of that land that's going to be used. So they can still use the other part of the land for another part of the building. That part of the building, or the birches would be gone if anything's developed in that land. So again, that's not a particularly good argument in my stand. Parking, as I said, I use this parking lot daily, and it's busy, but I don't mind busyness. I like people. I don't like living in isolation. I don't get worried by that. I've lived in Toronto, and this is not the same type of density that we're talking about in Toronto. I've lived in Halifax. It's not the same type of density we're talking about there. I am concerned about greenhouse gases, and I'm concerned about costs of servicing, and that's an issue that the town needs to worry about. And greenhouse gases are not good when you have a diverse, spread out municipality like we have. So to put things more closely in the density of the center of the city, of the town, is a good idea, I think. So I would recommend personally that the council go ahead with this approval. I think there's not enough justifiable reasons not to go ahead. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ardith Rose. I'm a tenant of John Lafford. I live on Waterfowl Lane. And if there's anyone in this room that has not been to Waterfowl Lane, you should take a little trip. I came there about 5.5 years ago. I was looking for a place to reside in Sackville. At that time, where my unit is now, was alder bushes, birch trees, maple trees, spruce and fir trees there. Right now, if you go there, there are 2 units. They're not boxes. They're very well designed. The landscape is beautiful. And when I look out my front door, I look at a lot of birches that are there. About my patio doors, I see maple trees and spruces and fir trees. I am a senior. You probably didn't notice, but I think this town, the more senior units we can have, the better. And also, I would love to see more assisted living units here as well, because I think that's what's coming in the future. And I would highly recommend that you, the council, approve of what the Laffords are proposing. They are wonderful landlords to me and my neighbors. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Wayne Harper. I too am in favor of this project. As someone will recognize, this white hair also belies my age. It is my intentions to also move into one of the units in this building, to which I've had several meetings with the Laffords. I have actually toured the site, been up top amongst the birch trees to see exactly the footprint of the building. And I am pleased with what I've been told. Yes, we will lose some birch trees. As Eric has mentioned a few minutes ago, they are not long-lasting tree. And in 10 to 15 years, or 5 to 15 perhaps, these trees will be gone through age. The trees that are in the lower section, I've been assured, are going to stay. the building lot itself is very conducive to putting in a underground parking facility as it falls off. And so the design of the building can blend into that hill, if you will. It affords a very nice optics for the people who are going to live there in terms of the Swan Pond, and in looking out, you'll be able to see, also be able to see the waterfowl park. I heard it mentioned in some emails that were floating around this week that driving down Main Street, you would have difficulty, you're going to miss all of these trees. Well, if you're driving down Main Street and you're looking at these trees, you're an accident waiting to happen. You're supposed to be watching the road. So I don't think that that is a valid argument at all. I think we've had, well, if you read the paper recently, you'll see that there's a fair amount of real estate sales taking place in this community. A lot of people are moving to this town to retire. And I think it needs to have a complex like this that will attract people to our town. Also, you will probably also be aware that the current situations with the property taxes have meant that the town has now got less money coming in. This, to me, is going to add to the tax base of the town, and therefore can reduce that deficit of money that's coming in from the province. I think this building, and what I've seen the layouts, as I said earlier, and I've toured the site. Traffic congestion, there'll be 36 units in there, probably no more than 25 or to 30 people will even have a car, and they all won't be on the road at the same time, and they won't be egressing or ingressing that parking lot all at the same time. So to me, that's a no-brainer. If you think it is. Anyway, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments to be made?
It's always a complex balance between,
Sorry, could you just identify yourself for the
I'm
record?
Kevin Torrey, grew up in this town, went to Los Angeles for a 15-year detour and have moved back to stay. I have a house here in town. There's a need for tax revenue. I understand that. I actually sat in Mr. Laffert's office a few years ago where he explained to me, and this is verbatim quote, that what matters is tax dollars, and people who care about the look of the town are just a little bit crazy, and you really just tax dollars matter. I don't concur with that. I think people come to the town for what the town is, and this, you know, in 1977, I was down there taking pictures of my high school graduation at one of the most beautiful spots in town. And you know, if you look at the development that's been done, I understand the need for rental houses or rental units and multi-units, and there's some efficiency to that. But I also know that clearly, not constricted, what will be built is the biggest, the ugliest, and the most oversized buildings in the most jarring colors possible. So when there's been some restrictions, the buildings are a little less big, a little less ugly, and a little better color accommodation. So the last giant box looks a lot better than the previous giant box. At least it's brick and it kind of fits in, as opposed to the two gray monstrosities that we all drive by and shudder at every day, but they just don't fit with the town. So I guess we're gonna get another building because there's enough land there to build it. But if we can make it less oversized and preserve a little bit of the ambiance of the most beautiful spots in town and preserve a little bit of what the town has, I think that's warranted. You know, I just happened to be driving through Freeport, Maine a few weeks ago, and as I drive by the McDonald's, which has white wooden clapboard siding and a normal gabled roof and fits in with the town, you have a town that said, hey, we realize there's a value to what the town is and to attract the tourists and to attract the residents. Yes, we need accommodation, we need seniors housing, there are other spots, and I won't even try to get a spot for Service New Brunswick downtown because that parking lot is full all the time. That left turn that people make, I'm not sure if it's legal or not, but people make the left turn out and the left turn in, I've had close calls. I'm not even sure that, I don't even know what's legal. People do make that. But, you know, there's enough traffic down there already. There's enough congestion down there. Yes, high density, but limits the density. So again, I mean, I assume we're going to have a building, and it looks like it's going to be, you know, less ugly than a lot of previous buildings. It's not gray, it's not steel siding, but to be that oversized and to just loom over such a beautiful spot, I hope we can, you know, you guys can leave it the way it is, that it's zone institutional. If you do nothing, then we get something more modestly sized and more in keeping, and you know, build more somewhere else, not in such a beautiful spot, such a landmark spot, such a signature spot for the town.
I'd just like to echo everything that Mr. Tory had said. Mary Ellen Nurse, and I did write the letter, and what wasn't expressed in the letter, and I thank the lady for doing the presentation, I couldn't read it all, was that why is Town Hall down, I didn't write this in the letter, but I'm going to say it now. Why is Town Hall down here when the United Church was falling apart up there and Mount A was building a big supersized building on the other side of campus? Why didn't minds come together at that time and figure out there could have been an annex for the town on the United Church spot? The town could have helped out. Now you're asking this town to figure out and believe that it's all going to be okay, that when another building comes in that area. It's not density. Otherwise, you guys wouldn't be here. You'd be back there, and you'd be living in the town that was created in, what it was, 1805 or something like that. I don't even know the time that was created. But that Main Street and Bridge Street is a mess. For all the work that you guys put in, our colleagues and everything, the facades are going to fall apart. And what we're having is a domain sitting building in an area that is the most beautiful in Sackville. We have one gentleman, and I deeply respect Mr. Lafford. I'm not here to make a claim that he's a bad person or anything. I understand capitalism. I understand those things. But let's get down to facts. It is the tax dollar that you guys want. You wouldn't have been here if it was to increase the density in the town or to get rid of the gas in the air or to whatever. That's not why you're here. But again, I say I'm a little upset because I was okay with the church going down because it took too much to rebuild it. And I'm glad Mr. Lafford actually took it over. He has done for the town good things. But when you encroach upon the history of this town and all of the memories that are created in that area for centuries, for a century at least, marriages. I mean, when you walk down that way, do you really want to see people staring out at their balconies, looking at you straight through to the waterfowl park as far as you can walk? That's a peaceful time. We can't get across the highway. We can't get away in our walks from people, right? I want to be isolated when I walk. It's been amazing to be able to go down from the back end of Convocation Hall and right straight through to the park to walk along and not think about anything or anybody staring at your back. I would hasten to say that half the people that have written in support of this are the seniors that can afford that complex and already have their name in those rooms. This is not to encourage people to be here and grow and come to sit in that area or live in that area. Those spots are taken for. I'm hearing that in the arguments that are made tonight. So It's not a decision to help seniors any more than those seniors that already have those highly coveted spots where they can look out on the most beautiful part of Sackville. And in fact, it's actually encroaching on the Waterfowl Park, where, as I understand, there was a rezoning request, which was denied when a building wanted to be on the Waterfowl Park, and you wouldn't permit it. So I think this is just a small step for Mr. Lafford being right on the Waterfowl Park, where he is when you see it. I hope if you do that, that the taxes that you do get from this get put into aiding those building owners in the town of Sackville on Bridge Street and Main Street that can't keep up the facades of their own building. And that's what I did say in the letter, is that if there's going to be taxes taken, maybe Mr. Lafford can support some of the facades in the building and create a better space for Bridge Street and Main Street, give and take. You know, that's just my thoughts.
Thank you.
I have my name is John Dishman. I've lived in this town, I was raised in this town and returned about 7 years ago. But I actually have a question of clarity I would like to understand. There's a huge fall off from the hill there down to Main Street where the eastern wing of that building is being built. Now, and I saw from Laurie's elevations that it's rather different than the previous picture that I saw, which was like that. It was straight across. So my concern was that the land where it falls off is being built up for this new building. Is that true? I'm addressing this to Laurie.
I'm not sure, are you able to answer that, or?
Is the grade being built up to meet the building, or is there sufficient fall off, a split level in the building to account for it? Or are we going to have a huge mound with
We'll
the
have to take, I think we're going to have to
building over it?
take a look to put that down and get an answer later, I think.
Well, and I think the important part to keep in mind is that this is the rezoning request, the actual final aspects of the construction of the building, that would come after the fact, once, if the zoning is successful. So those details, I would suspect,
Well-
are not
So just so
completely
clear, so
finalized.
for your
With
concern
all
is
due
the
respect-
elevation on that end,
Yeah.
and you want to be sure what that elevation on that end will look
Well,
like.
With all due respect, I think it does have some bearing, because if you have to build it up to the same height as the highest point on that hill where the building is being built, you've created a huge mound with this huge building on top of it that's going to loom over the entire area. It's going to surround the monuments that are there, as well as looming over the Swan Pond. So that's my point.
Yep.
I think we need this information in order to make the decision, and without it, we can't do what's good for the town. And that is that we want to make this area of the town attractive.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name's John McLeod. We moved here from Mississauga in 2013, basically to get away from the urban environment and what other people have echoed. We saw Sackville, the feel of it. We liked the look of it and so on, which around the Swan Pond was part of it. I guess that's going to be impacted with the development. We moved here because of it. I think it may well impact future people moving here. They're going to look at that. They may not like the look of it and decide to move elsewhere. A solution, I guess, coming onto Main Street from the parking lot, if the town or the developer put a median in, which would allow only right turns, that might solve some grief. We were here for the 506 development that was obviously funded by tax money and so on. I'm wondering why this is going ahead without the same sort of planning taking place. Or perhaps Mr. Latford, I think it is, he could look down in that area. It's a few kilometers out of town. That may help. Just one thing with rezoning, the other thing we've noticed since we've lived here, a number of the rental buildings that are built is basically paved and grass. There's no landscaping. So if Mr. Latford's saying he's going to do that, perhaps there should be a bylaw or something to ensure that that is done, as opposed to just taking his word. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good point. Very good.
Hi there, I'm the developer, John Lafford. And I guess I wasn't going to say a whole lot until I think Mrs. Nurse came up and she had some great points. And I think that's one of the attractions of the development for a developer, is that we're going to create 36 homes for people to enjoy that space. And from the outcome tonight, if Sackville's got a population of about 5,700 people, and I think there's probably 20 opposed, 15 opposed. Is it fair to say that there's 5,000 in favor of it that aren't here? I want to make that assumption. It's an assumption. So I definitely wanted to come and bring that point up.
People don't know about this hearing. It wasn't well.
I'm not having a, I just,
Let him speak, please.
let me speak, I'll let you speak.
Go ahead.
You hear me? I'll let you speak.
Yes, I
Yeah,
hear
okay, thank you. And the gentleman that just got up, he's got some good points there, but we have a lot of people coming from the major centers who are quite excited about a place like this, who they can come, live, be close to their grandkids. So we've had a lot of that expression to us. So there might be a few that are opposed to the big structure, but I think there's a heck of a lot of people that would be in favor of the big structure and have housing in the downtown core. So, you know, that's something else that I kind of wanted to speak on. Those are the only two real people that I thought that should have some respect shown. A couple other ones were just distasteful, and I don't make fun of how they look or what they do. One guy came up here talking about the color of the buildings. Well, I mean, it's terrible. I guess I'd like to close by saying, you know, to the council, that what we say we'll do. Yes, we're going to cut those trees, a good portion, yes. But we will replant as many as are cut. And that is a pledge. And if there's councilors who would like to make me follow that up, I encourage that and I welcome that. That's a very small investment on our behalf in comparison to the size of the building and the investment that we're going to put into the town. A few more trees, I'm more than welcome and more than happy to plant those. And if that site can't fit all those trees that we take down, then we will plant them at other locations designated by you people. And I guess that's it on my end. If there's any questions or concerns, I'd love to stand up here and answer each and every one of them.
Okay. It's not a point for questions here, John. We're trying to get input.
Okay.
And,
Okay,
and
but I just wanted to open that up for,
if specific points come up that we've got to follow up on, we're making note of that.
Yep.
And that'll be
and
raised at another time.
I just thought of something. I'm not great at this, but I just thought of something, one more thing. On the John Dushman idea about delaying this a little bit to find out if we're going to have a big Barney rubble pile of mud in front of the building, that's not the case. That front part will be exposed, and that'll be stoned. There's not a big pile of mud sitting in front of that, lurking those monuments. As a matter of fact, those monuments, we are going to pledge, that's never going to be touched. Remember, I'm the landlord of the monuments. And that there's one more year on that lease, actually 10 months. So in 10 months, those monuments are up for discussion. I personally want those to stay and make that site pretty. I want to add value to that site. I want to pledge that nothing will ever be touched in that 0.3 of an acre. That'll be green space for people to walk by and for the people who are going to pay the rent to enjoy that park style of life. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is my first town council meeting that I've attended since I moved to Sackville. Like the gentleman, my name is Susan Dales. Like the gentleman who spoke earlier, I too moved from Mississauga, from a very busy urban environment. And I was very fortunate through circumstance to be able to rent one of John Laffert's senior units. This is up King Street. And I have been very happy there. They're well taken care of, and it's great for seniors. I don't have to shovel the snow. My daughter lives in Sackville, and I used to visit her, of course, in the summertime. I visited her when the church was still standing, and it was one of the most beautiful sights to come up Main Street and see that gorgeous, iconic building. It just had a magic all its own. So although I don't know the circumstances and the past history, I was so sad when the church was no longer there. However, there were other spots of exquisite beauty, peace, areas of reflection, just a gorgeous center, sweet center of town with the waterfall park, those beautiful birch trees. I don't care if they only live for 10 or 15 years. For those 10 or 15 years, everyone who sees them is going to enjoy and rejoice that they're there. So I guess what I'm saying is there are so many practical issues around this. I agree we need seniors housing. One of the things that if I get the energy level up, I'd like to get involved in this part of the world, is cooperative housing for seniors. We have all of these beautiful old homes that can be renovated to be environmentally sound and good living quarters for seniors. There are 5, 6 bedroom homes that could be renovated. This is a possibility for affordable seniors housing. So when I look at this plan for this building, I agree for the people who can live there, it will be lovely. But if it's 36 units times 2, say there are a couple per unit, that's 72 people. There are going to be some singles. So say at the maximum, there could be 65 individuals in that building. I guess what I'm saying is to provide housing for these 65 individuals, and I know there are people that are already looking forward to living there, but is it worth losing all the surrounding beauty and putting it at risk? I don't think so. Beauty is so hard to find, and beauty is what makes Sackville, Sackville. So you're going to lose what, for me anyway, is an integral part of the identity of this town. And this is a gentle place to be and a beautiful place, and it's a good place for the soul. So I think there are other locations that could be looked at, other options. Certainly the smaller building would not have quite the impact. So I do consider, I do ask you to consider this very, very carefully, because you know when it's done and when you've lost the beauty, you can't get it back. And thank you.
Tim Raifenstein. There's been a number of very good points about this project for and against, and I appreciate hearing from from a number of folk who I don't normally hear from. And I think it shaped some of my comments, which aren't as well prepared as Meredith and others. They're off the cuff, but there seems to be a lot of opinions expressed, but not a lot of evidence. In terms of housing density, the only evidence we have was David Bruce's study, which was done in what year? At least a decade ago, if not more. Yeah. And I know the base here in Laurie Bickford's planning document was 2005. And it seems as if a lot of people are taking those as static dates rather than recognizing that studies that were done more than 10 years ago may not reflect the current reality and may not reflect current demand, may not reflect current appraisals. And, you know, people point to this municipal plan as this sort of foundational document. And I'm a geographer, a professional geographer, and so I understand the importance of planning. But, you know, there are limits. And when I'm downtown, I'm mainly on foot. And the only places I've ever been in fear for my life, the only place I've ever been hit is walking by the exit of that parking lot on York Street. And I'm young, I'm pretty spry, as some of you may attest on a good day. And so Councillor Finney, who isn't here, who I don't agree with a lot of the time, but his comments about safety and comments about density and comments about traffic really hit home to me. So when I saw him walking to, you know, I saw Bruce, and I said, I appreciate you raising that in the face of all other councillors who didn't raise any objections or were muted. And I would like to show support for Bruce, even if it means the project's built. I'm glad he sat in minority and said what he was going to say. And so my first point is about asking council, asking the town, asking decision makers to reflect on what basing points they're using for the decision making, and perhaps those aren't slightly outdated. Second point, there's been a lot said about the trees, and when I spoke to Bruce, I said, you know, Bruce, I don't really drive downtown. And the one thing I'll say about downtown is street parking. I'm not a great parker. I came from a city, and you can drive boats into most of those parking spots. But once you get into the parking lots, it's a bit of a gong show. It's not easy. I mean, trying to pick up my daughter at dance, and well, Allison knows I'm not a good parker. But the point is that we're blessed with ample parking, but parking space in the central downtown is going to get a lot busier with this project. And I'm not sure if an underground parking lot in and of itself, I mean, it's going to address the needs of those residents. And certainly, and many of the residents, if I was, you know, I think the people who have already, maybe signed on to this project, of course they're going to be for it, and I'm not begrudging them that. And I, maybe if I was in their situation, I'd want to live there too. I'll move it along. So going back to these trees, I didn't. Who's to say they're only going to live for 10 or 50 more years? They're on a beautifully well-drained site. And so what I'm saying to Bruce, okay, back to the point, is that I really like those trees. I really like the prospect they provide on the slope as they are. And, that, I came from the West Coast, and so when I heard Mount Allison, I imagined a slightly grander topography. And I'll say that this project sits on one of the few topographical variable sites in town. And so any trees there are going to be pretty happy and probably going to live longer than the 10 years that someone gave them. Well, yeah, and they're beautiful. And so if those trees are gone, and that may happen. I'm not sure what will replace them. Will have the slope retention properties of the existing trees, nor will that site be as beautiful? Now, as for the building itself, and credit to the Laffords is that each successive building has looked a lot better. No, every building you've done has looked better. So I'm not concerned about the architecture of the site, just that I imagine there's very few people in this room who wouldn't like a few do-overs of some of the earlier buildings. The point being that once you make a decision and once something happens, you can't go back on it. And so if we build this project, or if this project is built, and the trees are gone and that nice slope, that grade is gone and replaced with a gabion wall or something, then that will be a loss of an asset of this town. And so there's a trade-off of density, and I understand density as it relates to greenhouse gases. Well, concrete and asphalt are the third largest point sources of greenhouse gases. So the more concrete you add, the more asphalt you build, I mean, you're taking from Peter to pay Paul, essentially. So I'm not sure if we're net ahead there or not. Yeah, a number of people spoke for the trees, so I'll finish by saying I really like those trees. It would be a shame to see them go, but I understand we seem to be working off of plans that are somewhat dated, so thank you.
My name's Keith Carter, and I have a birch tree on my lawn, and I planted it about 30 years ago, and it's been dying steadily for the last 10 years, so it hasn't got much life left, so birch trees don't live that long. But my main point here is that the land was for sale, the Laffords bought it, and if everybody was so concerned, they should have bought the land and then they could do as they liked with it. Lafford is coming up with a very good proposal, I think, for his development to do with what the fellow that just spoke, said about, one of his comments was on what you do with the real estate. Well, that's what the Laffords do with their real estate. So when it was bought, they bought with the intentions of building something on it. So I think that we should support them. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Paula Arndt. I moved here from Amherst, and I moved here from other cities. And I just want to ask you not to allow this to be built in this particular spot. For all the reasons that have already been said, we have a lot of empty spots in this town that would be just fine for a building of this size where people will have cars. They can walk to the Waterfowl Park. There are places that are close enough that they can walk like I need to, and like some other people who are older than I too need to as well. If we don't retain the culture of our town by its structures and its land, it's gone. And we'd have to look forward to a long time in this town, and our grandchildren have to have that. And we can't keep destroying it and changing it like that. That's all.
I'll call if there's any other presentations to make.
I'd like just to add one thing to my comment, which was just to give you a sense of the level of discourse. Yes, I called some buildings in town ugly. Mr. Lafford, as he walked by, elbowed me in the head, and I'd like him to walk down to the police while I can file an assault charge for that. That's not what we should be doing here. Yes, I don't think the corner drugstore building is attractive. I don't expect to be physically assaulted for it. He walked by and elbowed me in the head. Really? Is that the level of discourse we've got here? Is that the level? Are you? Seriously. You elbowed me in the head as you walked by. True? I elbowed you in the head.
All right, let's keep the respect going here for a second. Last call for Anybody who wishes to address the council on this topic? Last call. Come on, order.
I just have one thing I wanted to say. Is it possible that the town could purchase that land from John and Joe Lafford? And then we could keep that? It seems precious to a lot of people. It's our tax dollars. Why wouldn't, and this gentleman was saying that, oh, why don't other people buy it? I mean, I know Splash did put in quite a few offers to buy the footprint of the church, and there was no way that he would negotiate with us. But why can't the town buy this property that he wants to build on? And that would make him happy, it would make everybody in the town happy, and could keep the green space downtown. Just a thought.
The town shouldn't be in the land business.
Yeah. Okay, so it looks like some people want to debate each other outside the room. That's okay. But we do need, if there's my last call, if anybody wishes to speak to council on this topic, and then we're going to move on to the next item. No, hearing none? Okay, so at this point, let me figure out where we are. Okay, so we are at, under the public hearings, we have related motions. Councillor Evans, do you want to do those first items?
Yeah, I want to, off the cuff, perhaps propose a motion. Do we want to consider first reading tonight? I believe the applicant has asked. We have done this before. We did it most recently with the ambulance one, where the proponent said there was a time constraint and wanted us to do it as soon as we could. And so we could have first reading tonight. It doesn't mean that we will necessarily, we could have first reading and change our minds. I know I've certainly done that. So it's my understanding the proponent would like to have first reading tonight. If council, so I don't want to have the motion defeated because we don't want to have it tonight. So I'd like to propose a motion. Do you want to have the motion, the first reading of the motion that was circulated done tonight? Is that in order?
Well, we can't discuss a discussion on a potential motion. We'd have to discuss
No, I'm
a
saying,
motion.
is it in order for me to make that motion?
It is your prerogative to make that motion.
Okay, then I would like to make that motion to see if council is interested in having the motion that is before us, having first reading tonight.
But will that motion defeat?
If that motion is defeated, that means we will not have first motion tonight.
Does that mean it will be later?
I'm going to ask
If
the
someone
CEO
brings it
for
up later.
clarity on process, because I think there's more to it than that.
Your worship, members of council, I don't think you can have a discussion around whether or not we should have a motion advanced or not. It is legal to move a motion within the framework and do first reading this evening if that's the will of council. If the first reading is defeated this evening, then that's it for at least a year before it can come back. What can happen is if a motion is advanced for first reading and the debate would be if someone wished to defer it so that the first reading did not happen, I think that would be a way to address what Councillor Evans is suggesting. So rather than make a decision on the original motion, there would be a deferral or refer to the next public meeting because council wants more time. So
once again,
my caution is please don't put something on the floor and put yourselves into a corner that you make a decision prematurely either for or against before you're ready.
And I, once again, like the advice I get from our main employee. So I'm prepared to make the motion that the one that was circulated. And if someone wants to move to defer it, table it, whatever, they could make that and that could be accomplished. So the proponent, it's the same thing that happened with the ambulance.
You'll need to move the motion if
Okay.
you're going to do that.
Okay. The wording for the motion. Okay,
Here's some wording.
okay, that's the one. I move that council give first reading in name only to bylaw number 244F, a bylaw to amend the bylaw number 244 to Town of Sackville zoning bylaw. Town of Sackville, the council of the Town of Sackville, under the authority vested in it by Section 53 and in accordance with Section 59 of the Community Planning Act, SNB 2017, C19, amends bylaw 244, Town of Sackville zoning bylaw, and enacts as follows. 1. Bylaw number 244, the Town of Sackville zoning bylaw is amended by changing the zoning as shown in zoning map figure 1 on the Town of Sackville zoning bylaw for a portion of the property identified as parent PID 70553284 as shown on Schedule A, hereto attached.
Councillor Evans, I think you're reading from the other motion that is on
You're
the
right.
table. I don't think you're.
So where was,
I think you're reading first motion, the first page only.
It's just that first one.
That's it.
just what I read?
Yeah, so could you just read that again? So everybody-
Okay, do-over. I move that council give first reading in name only to bylaw number 244F, a bylaw to amend bylaw 244, Town of Sackville zoning bylaw.
So moved, seconded by Councillor Tower. So at this point, the motion is on the table for discussion.
Yeah.
And who would like to speak first? Councillor Evans.
I'm on. We have a history, a precedent, about half the time, slightly less, when people, after the public meeting, we do first reading if there's time sensitivity. The developer has indicated to us that that there are time constraints, and so I'm prepared to, as we did with the ambulance rezoning one that I got into ahead of time, I'm prepared to speak in favor of doing this. It doesn't mean that we are guaranteeing by voting in first reading that we will pass second and third reading. I know I have changed my vote between first and second reading. But this is the wish of the developer. There is always a risk in doing this, but I'm prepared to entertain that and speak in favor of it at this stage.
I suggest other councillors should weigh in on this. Councillor Tower.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too feel we should have this debated, and if the developer wants us to take the chance moving forward to see what the vote will be, if it helps the process, because I know you have to hire a lot of people to do a lot of jobs. But since this is talking about a piece of land and rezoning, I'm in favor of the motion that we should move forward and allow him to proceed if it's going to be at all possible in the future.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will support the first reading, if only to give myself a chance to consider this a little more fully with the public input I've written down. So, and again, first reading doesn't guarantee anything. It just starts the process.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Mitten, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to echo what my fellow councillors and Deputy Mayor have said, that I'm going to vote in favor, or vote in support of the first reading passing, and of course that doesn't mean that it will pass at second or third reading. However, I think there's wisdom in not voting no right now and making this be put off for another year if we would like it to pass. So I'm going to vote in favor today.
Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I agree with the rest of my councillors. I'm happy to vote in favor of it.
Okay. Councillor Butcher.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree that first reading, I agree to that. I like to take the time to think about input that I've heard from constituents, and I'm glad this is first reading. I think it's important that we have time to process everything that we've heard from everyone else. But I'm definitely in favor of moving forward and starting the process.
Councilor Black?
I apologize in advance. I'll be a little more lengthy. I do speak in favor of the motion. I do want to process the information that the constituents have brought forward tonight. But since there's a good crowd here, I prepared something that I wanted to read about lower income housing. I guess John might have stepped out, but I see Joe back there. Since this issue of the Lafford rezoning came up, some people have been talking about the need for lower income housing in Sackville. The building that J.N. Lafford Realty wants to build does not fit this bill for truly low income housing, but does tick off a box for our drive to be an age-friendly community. The truth is there are lower income living spaces in Sackville that give people the chance to have a home. The problem is that there's not enough. This can be said of Sackville, and it can be said for many other towns and cities across Canada. When we were in Ottawa last year for the FCM annual general meeting, the national budget had just been released, and from that there was talk at the AGM about what was going to happen for the national housing strategy. This issue was only hinted at during the AGM, but in subsequent emails and newsletters, it was felt that the feds were going too light with their approach and that more needed to be done. On May 2nd, the feds launched a key component of the national housing strategy, the National Housing Co-Investment Fund, which is the largest component of the overarching strategy. The fund is a $13.2 billion commitment consisting of $4.52 billion in grants and $8.65 billion in low-interest loans. Along with the previously announced $3.75 billion rental construction financing initiative and $208 million for Affordable Rental Innovation Fund, it comes out at $17.15 billion nationally to deal with housing issues for low and lower income. The reason I'm mentioning this now is a call out to local builders and landholders looking to help our town get the low-income housing that we need. There's money through the new construction stream and through the repair and renewal stream that can put funds in builders' hands that have a focus and agenda geared to lower-income housing. There are online applications for potential federal money, as well as all the information one would need to know at www.nhs/snl.ca. Thank you. Spread the word. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Black. Councilor Evans, you get a final say?
Yep, just to follow up. And first of all, I like the fact that we have discussion, and so I appreciate that, Councilor Black. The other thing, I wanted to say this the first time I spoke, I wanted to say, even though it's usually contentious issues that gets people to come out to meetings, I like seeing a bunch of people here. I think it's important, and I'm glad to see you, even though we might not all agree about stuff. And that leads me to my second point, is that reasonable people can disagree about what the right thing to do is. And it doesn't mean, at least I don't think it means, that you're wrong or that you're bad. That it's okay to disagree, it's not okay to be disagreeable. The point that I want to make is that we are being asked to rezone some property. The debate, and it's heartfelt and I appreciate it, is about what you want to see done. Our job is to decide a zoning request, and we are constrained by the law, and we need to do the right thing. And so that we are not being asked to debate whether we like this project or not. We're being asked to rezone a piece of property. And as I said at the discussion meeting, but I think I'll repeat now, as Councillor Black has said, when you have an audience, to explain. When the property was purchased in 2012, if the property lines had been well established, the council of the day would have approved this request. This is exactly the same request. It was only zoned institutional because a church owned it. When someone who's not an institution buys this, we automatically zone it to the appropriate use, and the appropriate use for an area there is mixed use. So we are just rationalizing, cleaning up something that didn't happen last time because something wasn't clarified. So, and I guess I shouldn't name people, but someone said, when people buy private property, it's their property and they get to make decisions. All they have to do is follow the rules. They have to obey the law. If we had a bylaw that said certain things, then the developer and we would be constrained by that bylaw. We don't have the bylaw that some people would like us to have, because the people in this room don't agree and people on council don't agree what that should be. So right now we don't have such a bylaw. And it's the same way with your own property. You buy a piece of land, provided you obey the existing rules, you can build whatever you want and paint it whatever color you want. That's the world we live in, and our job is to enforce existing law and do our jobs. And so that's why I'm doing this now. I'm not making a statement about what I like or don't like. I'm doing my job. Thank you.
Question? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion first reading is carried. Thank you. We move to, Councillor Evans, you want to jump ahead on other bylaw motions that you have? Could you start with 244?
Could I start with the one that I've already read? I work well under direct supervision. Maybe the clerk
Just
can
hang
come
on,
over.
we'll check you got the right
Okay, so
word.
that's that one. Okay.
You need to do your motion.
Okay, just do that on the motion sheet, yeah.
You do first and second reading, then you read that.
Well, yes, that's right. Yeah, I'm good there. But what was the other, and then, this is the public meeting for Bob Edgetts?
Yes.
Okay.
This doesn't come till later, that's the first one.
Okay, I just have it here. It was, the confusion was that I had this one instead of reading this one, so.
So you need to go back just a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah,
You're under regional
yeah,
services.
yeah. Policy bylaw,
Your mic's on.
yeah.
Okay, Councillor Evans, please.
Before we lose our audience. I move that council give second reading, section by section, to bylaw number 244E, a bylaw to amend bylaw 244, Town of Sackville zoning bylaw. The council of the Town of Sackville, under the authority vested in it by section 53 and in accordance with section 59 of the Community Planning Act, SNB 217 C19, amends bylaw number 244, the Town of Sackville zoning bylaw, and enacts as follows. 1. Bylaw number 244, the Town of Sackville zoning bylaw is amended by changing the zoning as shown in zoning map figure 1 of the Town of Sackville zoning bylaw for a portion of the property identified as parent PID 70553284, as shown on Schedule A attached here to and forming part hereof from highway commercial to institutional for the purpose of operating an ambulance service, and 2, establishes the maximum front yard setback at 15.24 meters or 50 feet. A seconder.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Seconded by Councillor O'Neill.
Okay, so I will just speak to this. This is the motion we had, which has been referred to before, and if it sounds familiar, it's because I read half of it before. But this is so that a piece of property, it's just the opposite of what we're doing here. We have a piece of property that is zoned inappropriately for the use. Our community plan and zoning bylaw encourages this kind of rezoning. Anytime someone wants to do something that requires an institutional zoning in order to do it, and it otherwise is appropriate, we do this. We had first reading before. We're doing second reading now. This is about the ambulance location. And all the comments that I made last month are here, but I do want to say something that I saw from your report. I had raised the question about the proponent, not the proponent, but the people who might build the ambulance location, if they would be notified of the potential flood risk or islanding that could happen from flooding elsewhere. And I understand that Ms. Bickford has done exactly as she said she would do, and I thank her for that.
Thank you. Second reading, any comments from council? Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried.
I move that council give third and final reading to bylaw number 244E, a bylaw to amend bylaw 244, Town of Sackville zoning bylaw.
Moved by Councillor Evans, seconded by Councillor Mitten. Question?
Question.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried.
Whereas council has considered an application from Bob Edgett Memorial Boxing Club Incorporated to amend bylaw 244, the Town of Sackville zoning bylaw, to rezone the property known as PID 009033302 from urban residential 1 to institutional to permit the construction of a new clubhouse. Be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Sackville directs that an appropriate bylaw be prepared to amend Bylaw 244, the Town of Sackville zoning bylaw, as it pertains to the above noted property, that the proposed bylaw be referred to the Southeast Planning Review and Adjustment Committee, otherwise known as PRAC, for their views, that the notice of intention requirements of the Community Planning Act be fulfilled with respect to the proposed amendment, and sets the council meeting on Monday, June 11th, 2018 at 7 p.m. in council chambers of Town Hall, 31 Main Street, 2nd floor, Sackville, New Brunswick, as the date, time, and place for the public hearing of consideration of objections to the proposed bylaw.
Second that.
Moved by Councillor Evans, seconded by Councillor O'Neill.
And just again, for a little bit of information, we had a good discussion at the discussion meeting, Natch, that this was a piece of property that already had a clubhouse on it, and there's a term for it in planning. I call it grandfathered. Is it an exemption was made? A what? Non-conforming, right. So they could have it like that as long as they want it, but they want to replace it. They can't do new construction because it's not zoned appropriately. So we're going to zone it for what it actually is. Or that's the motion. Haven't had it.
Comments? Questions from council? Question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. I think that's it for you. Okay, we're on to item 8, which is a proclamation from myself. New Brunswick Nursing Home Week, June 3 to 9, 2018. Whereas in New Brunswick, we value and respect those individuals requiring care and services provided in a nursing home environment, and whereas we believe it is important that all nursing home residents have the opportunity to enjoy the best quality of life possible, and whereas nursing homes across the province have a long and proud history of caring for residents in need of professional nursing care, and whereas these nursing homes provide meaningful employment to New Brunswickers in professional and support roles, and whereas the boards of directors, management, and staff are committed to compassionate and high-quality care for their residents, therefore, I, John Hyam, Mayor of the Town of Sackville, do hereby declare June 3 to 9, 2018 as New Brunswick Nursing Home Week in the Town of Sackville. Thank you. Councillor Evans.
This is a proclamation. One of the perks of your office is you get to make it. We don't debate it, but I am aware that there is a campaign going on about the people we have a proclamation about, the people working in a nursing home, and they're concerned that the nursing homes have become understaffed, that the staff have to look after patients. The patient-staff ratio is such that they feel they can't provide good care. So they're lobbying people to become aware of this and do something about it. Lobby your MLA or whatever. It's a provincial matter. And I think if we're going to have a proclamation saying we support these people, I should take advantage of the megaphone that I have here to repeat their request.
Any other question? I would just note that we did have an announcement of an investment in the local Drew Nursing Home, which was well appreciated. Appreciate that. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Evans, for commentary. We move on to item 9, which is the mayor's report. Fairly busy bunch of things I want to let you know about. I always start with media just first. There were multiple interviews to do with the Camtran opening, which is the former Maloney plant. I'll talk a little bit about that later. CBC TV also came in and did a story on the quarry and where that may sit at. So both of those. I also had a couple of others which I had to turn down because I was at Convocation instead of at some other events that were on. So that's it for media this last month. I'm getting multiple inquiries on age-friendly questions. What are the services that are going to come from the age-friendly report that's been produced? Who should be contacted and how to get involved? What are the next steps after this report has been received, and who's going to implement those types of things? As you may recall, the draft report had a lot of things for community organizations to do and not a lot for the town itself to do. So we do need to spend a little time to consider what our role is in how they've refined it, and also about how we think implementation should proceed. Mental health services, you'll recall that I was approached by a couple of people who were interested in providing mental health services here as a business venture, or perhaps as in another matter. We did arrange some discussions with various organizations around town and the individuals who were involved, and I'm happy to note that when I went to the Wellness Forum, they were there and have set up a business to begin that services, and there were sent a note afterward that many of the comments, and several of you were people that they subsequently spoke with, were very, very supportive, and they felt comfortable that they were ready to launch a business to start that process. So that's good. There's another business in town providing mental health services. So we should let folks know about that. And I know Councillor O'Neill has, I've been approached by another person, which I hope will follow the same sort of track. And there is a group interested in home care services and locating here and providing those services. So that's a very early start, but we hope the process will unfold just as it did with mental health services as a business. Multiple inquiries about how the town now needs to market itself for business development. Generally on this idea that there are, as we've talked multiple times about Camtran and Terraviata and other events over at the industrial park, that we now have to start thinking about, other than filling those gaps, we now have to start thinking about it in a marketing strategy. And interestingly, people are stopping me asking that. What is it you're going to market? How are you going to communicate it? How can people get involved? So I just raised that that's, again, a topic perhaps for strategic to talk about, but it's coming from the residents themselves over what's next in business development. Interestingly, I was approached by someone who has outlined a large amount of seniors-based housing unit in a conceptual plan. There are some issues with some of the elements of it, but he is proceeding to try to iron some of those out. And if that does work, we'll hear about it in a little bit more detail later on. Camtran opening on Friday was the official opening, where Opportunities New Brunswick made announcements of their support for some of the renovations. We had the opportunity to get inside, and I'll tell you, it's like day and night from when I went in that plant while it was closed. Oh, yeah. Absolutely amazing. It's everything's shiny, everything's white, everything's clean. The machines are all polished up, and they're running. There are 17 people employed for that day. One of the questions of the new owner was, what's your upside? Well, we're looking to go to 50 to 60 employees. We'll do it as that business evolves, and he spoke about the markets for the business and how that he sees that unfolding. So that was a really good day. Community Machinery, by the way, I introduced them to the new management a month or so ago. Daniel contacted me to say that had worked out really, really well. He's now providing services to Camtran. He creates some of the tools and dies that they need. He showed up at the opening, so it's a nice little relationship where people are helping people. So again, it's important how we communicate with people and think about those linkages. Had a meeting with the CN Rail corporate representative. Most of it was simply trying to get my points across about what I believe their interests should be and how it should be represented in terms of both fresh and saltwater flooding initiatives that are ongoing, and that we've done as much as we can do alone. Now we need partnerships to address more freshwater, and we basically have absolutely no authority or jurisdiction to deal with saltwater, so we're going to advocate as much as we can, and they have to become part of that. So that led to me formally requesting that I meet with the Vice President of CN once again this spring during the FCM conference in Halifax. I haven't heard back on that formal request, though. I spoke about ChargePoint contacts after I had spoken to a former classmate out in Simon Fraser, who's now a climate energy expert, and he had put me in touch with ChargePoint, who creates the fast repowering of electric vehicles and hybrids. And another former student is involved in that in the Canadian environment. We've had a couple of discussions over how that might fit. I described our central location. I described much of the context, which you heard about tonight, about greenhouse gas concerns and development concerns and marketing concerns. And they were extremely interested in this as a site that they, as a manufacturer, should be considering. So still going back and forth with her over how that might come out. So I just wanted to keep you up to date on that. As you heard again tonight, there was multiple people from various places that have been coming to town, and they have been making it a point to come up and introduce themselves to me, where they've come from and why they came. I think what's intriguing is when we listen to the owners of Camtran and Terra Beata, they're the same reasons they came here. It's the quality of the labor force. It's the understanding of technology being the next phase of business, the next phase of how it could develop, and it's the culture and beauty of the place. Then it's the location. And so the location for businesses is export potential or maritime-wide servicing from a central point, but with the advantage of a labor force that's skilled, knowledgeable, and can participate. People are moving here, businesses are moving here for that. People are moving here for the quality of life. So we have a dynamic that we have to continue to keep in balance. I think almost everybody spoke about that tonight. That balance is so, so important. And when you make those choices, they have impacts. There has been some concern raised over at the rink, alcohol service being served during events when minors are there. We've had some discussion. Many of you who've been on council have heard that discussion multiple times over the years. So I did go back with some of the previous discussions that had been had about why that policy was in place. I attended the Sackville Cemetery's annual general meeting at their request. They invited me, and it was quite informing for me to understand how the Sackville Cemetery runs. We were, of course, invited by, for my position was because of the relationship with the George Stanley Monument Memorial and Flagpole. They are very, very happy with that. They were asking, how else can we get people to come up and walk through this cemetery and understand the heritage that is there? And I think there are certainly some walking linkages. I think tourism's talking about it, and it's something that I said, I think we've got some mutual interests in this. So it was very interesting. A lot of cemeteries, as you may not know, are basically being walked away from. They're being abandoned because they can no longer be serviced financially or kept up properly. That's not the case with Sackville Cemetery. It's very well run with a nice balance of investments that allows them to do that. So I think they appreciate what we did. They would like to do that more in the future, and would be happy to talk with us about some of those other elements they've got in mind. Multiple interests, and I think they're varied, but I'm surprised at how many people have raised the Via Rail station with me, and the question of what's its future, who's going to deal with it, how is it going to be dealt with. I think that my answer is mostly, look, the town's not going to buy it and run it, and the town's not going to run a deficit to do it. But if there are individuals or organizations that have some interest in it, we're happy to hear what their plans are and how they might want to deal with that. But at this point, it's kind of questions, hoping that the town would do something as opposed to what my reply tends to be. So we'll see where that goes. But they are not linked. There are a variety of very, very different individuals and organizations that have asked about that. I did meet one provincial candidate for legislative office this month, and offered that same opportunity to describe town issues and priorities to any candidates, so I'm about to meet the next one this week. So it depends if they take me up on that, but I'm very happy to talk about what we're doing and where we're going and what kind of a representation we'd like to see of some of our interests. A variety of other, several border town events, the fire department breakfast, the wellness forum, roller derby as well, and I did not get on the floor. I did not. And convocation, of course, although others were there in a more formal manner. And I appreciate that, by the way. Several people commented on other councillors who had been involved in the roles they played, while I was a spectator to many of those things this year. VE Day, almost all of us came down for that with the Legion. That was nice. On Monday, during convocation, there was a press announcement in Amherst on federal monies for looking at solving some of the saltwater flooding issues. I don't know a whole lot about it because I was at convocation. I have seen the material and had some contact with the mayors of that side who did attend. They're happy. In their view, we have met the original premise of our letter of last fall, which was to get to this stage. There didn't appear to be a whole lot of understanding over how this was going to be implemented. It looks like it is to be implemented by provincial staff, which is appropriate in many ways, but we don't know the details, I think. Dwayne, unless you can add anything to that, I don't think we know the details of their terms of reference or how they're proceeding at this point.
How much are we talking about?
350,000 was what the announcement was to determine feasibility of and primary options, I would put it that way. I did get a question after the Mi'kmaq flag was raised at Mount Allison. I did get a question from a resident about what role the town is playing in reconciliation. I just raised that because we've talked about that multiple times. If someone wishes to pursue that opportunity, I think timing is pretty good. And just the last thing, I do have finally for you all a list of liaison roles that I would like to talk with each of you about over the next week or so. It's not a complete shift. It's just a couple of shifts to recognize things. And also, we know somewhat what we're doing, what the priorities are going to be over the next year, and I think there are some abilities to put people into areas of strengths and interest. So that I look forward to talking to you all about that. And we'll have to, I think it's the annual point for a deputy mayor alignment as well, so we really should probably do both of those soon, liaison shifts and the deputy mayor. Any questions on anything I raised? No, I just deferred to the deputy mayor. I think you attended a couple of items that might be of note.
Thank you, Your Worship. This last month, I represented the town at two separate events. As the mayor has alluded, I was representing the town at convocation this year. Well, the mayor sat comfortably and took pictures. And I went to the annual general meeting of the Rural Rides group. It was held in Salisbury. And just essentially an update on what they've been up to and what they've been doing. If you remember, they came to council several months ago to talk about setting up essentially what is a cheap ride service for seniors and low-income people. And they said that and it was an experimental event in Tantramar region, and they said the Tantramar experiment had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations. So they have in excess of 30 clients here in this area right now, and something like in the last year, 1,600 rides were provided. So it's been quite successful, and they plan on continuing it. They operate by charging the user a very small fee, about 25 cents a kilometer. So to go to an appointment, for example, in Moncton costs some $25 roughly, where a taxi would cost in excess of 100. So it's a good service for those that need it. They don't pay all their bills with the essentially the fees they charge. So they make up the difference in donations and fundraising. And that was about it. It was just a very brief report on what their activities were.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other questions on anything, Mayor or Deputy Mayor's report? Okay, so we'll move on to the CAO's report, please.
Thank you, Worship. CAO reports on page 27 in the package, and most of the information will come up through the detailed reports, and there's a number of motions forthcoming as well. I will just make one comment in terms of our finances with the auditing. Just publicly want to thank the staff for the excellent job that they've done in 2017 in terms of increasing our revenue beyond what was budgeted, being very successful in a number of grant areas, delivering the programs and services within the budget expectations, and more importantly, staying within our processes and policies from a financial perspective, which the auditors had noted as well. So I think that's something that deserves to be mentioned, and I appreciate that, and I'm sure council does as well. And I guess I just also want to thank council for having the confidence in the staff and working with the staff to implement the decisions and manage the funding that is budgeted on behalf of the taxpayers to deliver the programs and services. And I guess one other comment I'd just make in attending the Chancellor's Dinner last night, just want to recognize that Mount Allison did have another successful convocation again this year with over 400 graduates, and we certainly hope some of them either stay and or find their way back to Sackville in the future. And I just also want to congratulate Dr. Campbell as he's completing his 12th year as president, and it was certainly very evident he served the university very well and during his term, and from a town perspective, I know I certainly appreciated working with him and the relationship that the town and the university has had in my time here has been, for top rate, and I thank him for his support during that time too. So with that, Your Worship, that's my report, and if there's any questions, I'd be prepared to answer any questions or concerns council has.
Councillor Evans, please.
Just a comment on that last point is that Robert did an exceptional job as president, and it worked well with us, and the relationships that we have at the university have improved over time. But I also want to make a point that during his tenure being celebrated, he made a shout out to Phil talked about the good working relationship. So it works both ways, and I think both parties deserve credit for that.
Okay, hearing no other comments, we'll move to item C on reports. Finance and Admin, Councillor, who's doing that? Councillor Tower?
I'll do part one, Your Worship. The bills and payroll, which are on pages 28 and 29, there's one large figure under general capital, which I'll get our treasurer to explain simply. Otherwise, the overtime is all explained at the bottom of the sheet, so I'll hand it over to you, Michael, for any comment.
Thank you, Councillor Tower. Yes, the general capital was larger this month, $558,000. The majority of that was the new fire truck that was purchased, which was over 500 of that. In addition, there was the traffic control device up at Mallard Drive, GPS equipment, and the slab for the EMO facility. Everything else, there was no utility capital this month. General government, utility government were just regular bills, and as noted, the overtime is noted in the report.
Thank you, Michael. If there's no questions, I do have a motion.
Just, I would make one comment, which I didn't make in the my mayor's report, which was that a McDonald's senior staff person came to me and said, we want to thank you for the change in the lighting in that intersection, that the safety, he said, we daily watch people getting close or getting chipped or et cetera. He said the new lighting structure that was implemented is working very, very well. They don't see that sort of a risk to the pedestrians any longer. So I thought that was interesting that he was able to see that and wondered what we had done. So I think that's a very good. Okay, so
Thank you, Worship.
Councilor Tower?
And to add to that, I've had a couple of people ask me why we don't have signs up saying no right turn on a red light, on a walk light. And so Dwayne, I've been communicating with him, and those things are coming, but that's what I explained to them. Patience, it takes time to get it all done. So, okay, I move that council accept the bills and payroll for the month of April 2018 as follows. General government, $186,149.45. General capital, $558,817.95. Utility government, $51,339.62. And utility capital, nothing. And salaries of $215,644.25.
Moved by Councilor Tower. Seconded by Councilor O'Neill. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Councilor Tower again.
No, I'll pass it off to the
Deputy Mayor Aiken.
Thank you, Your Worship. The financial report for the month of April appears on page 20, and I'll give an executive summary of it here. Financial statements are included to the end of April 2018. We're now 1/3 of the way through the year, and the only anomaly is within utility capital with the repairs to the excavator that were unbudgeted. Moving into the summer, the managers need to be progressing through their capital projects, as all items in general capital were capital out of revenue, and therefore must be completed by December 31st of this year. The year-end continued through April as the auditors worked to complete the audit for 2017. The draft audit was presented to us in the special council meeting a week ago, and the motion to approve it will be given tonight. For 2017, the general fund finished the year with a $51,291 surplus, while the water and sewer fund finished the year with a $9,330 surplus. These amounts will form part of our 2019 budget process and be recorded as revenue for that year. No borrowing took place in 2017 for general capital projects, with $797,000 being required to be borrowed for water and sewer. Water billing for the period of January to March 2018 went out on April 16th with the due date of May 15th. We continue to work on collection of the water and sewer shut-off letters that were sent back in September 2017. At that time, there was a total of 73 accounts that received shut-off notices for a total value of $69,883.69. And as of May 1st this year, we have collected $55,718.53, or just under 80% of the total. We'll be sending another set of shut-off letters this summer. Interviews were undertaken for student bylaw officers for the summer of 2018, and I'll be presenting a motion tonight so the students can enforce the bylaws on the hire date of June 4th. During the month, a meeting was held with provincial staff regarding the equalization grant, fire service costs, and regional facilities funding. As well, we had a meeting with the RCMP property management with regard to our current lease. Updates will be provided to council at a future discussion group meeting. And attached to this report are the bylaw enforcement and animal control statistics for April. And since we're getting into the summer season, I would remind people that leaving animals in the car in upcoming weather is a very bad idea. And I have, I'll leave with any questions on the report. I'll turn it over to the treasurer.
Okay. What are you asking for?
I have.
Oh, I thought you were turning it over to.
No, if there are questions.
No questions? Okay.
No, I haven't,
Motions?
some motions. I move the council approve the 2017 audit as presented by Stevenson and Partners LLP and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign and seal the audit.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Evans.
Can I just comment comment on this? This is an ordinary thing, but I think it was exceptional that the auditors, and the CAO alluded to this in his report, seemed to go out of their way to say not only was this an unqualified audit, but things were really good. And I mean, their job is not to give opinions, but when pressed, they seem to acknowledge that an exceptional job had been done. So I just wanted to point that out as noteworthy, because I think staff did a remarkable job in what was potentially a tough year with the revenue being down. So thank you for that.
Yes, in that same vein, I personally would like to comment on the fact that we created something, almost $6 million in new assets, and the debt of the town has gone down. That's a very difficult accomplishment to make. So I think we had a very good discussion of this over discussion. But I think people need to understand that this was an extraordinary year in many, many respects. So question?
Question?
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried.
I move that council appoint Stevenson and Partners LLP of Riverview, New Brunswick as our auditors for the year 2018.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Black. Question? Perhaps I could ask Mr. Beal for, this is standard practice. This is the time of year, and we have a standard engagement. Could you just describe perhaps some of that?
Yes, thank you, Worship. So once the audit is approved, we do need to reappoint auditors for the following calendar year. So I had received a letter late this afternoon indicating that their price would remain the same for 2018, as well as they would endeavor to maintain the same auditors on the file, being Julie and Ryan, and pending that both are still with them, of course, and everything, which is a big plus for us from a staff level, because they know where everything is and they know the processes in place, and they can go about performing their audits and their checks on their own for the most part, with staff just being needed to provide them the computer information when they need that, and to pull various files. So having the same staff is a plus for staff. So
thank you, Mr. Beal. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried.
I move the council authorize the transfer of $25,000 to Renaissance Sackville, their grant for the year 2018, in accordance with the 2018 operational budget, with the understanding that $12,500 of the grant will be used to support community development projects, and the remaining $12,500 will be allocated to support entrepreneurship and business development projects, and furthermore that Renaissance Sackville will provide regular reporting to Sackville Town Council.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Butcher. Any questions of Councillor Tower?
Thank you, Worship. I'm just curious, this motion is very familiar to me, but I'm still curious as what regular reporting to Sackville means. Is it once a year, 3 times a year, 4 times? When we,
I'd ask Mr. Burke, is that appropriate for you?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Tower. Good question. I guess there's no clear definition of what regular reporting is between Ron and I. We attend the Renaissance Sackville meetings, so if there's anything alarming or unusual, I think it would be our responsibility to advance that to council. As part of the budget process, every year we reach out to Renaissance Sackville and get them to provide an update on how the money was spent over the year. They're not providing a large number of grants given the money they have available, so I think the number of times they present, certainly over the last year, seem to be reasonable. So I think with that in mind, we would look to proceed under the same arrangement as we did last year, and the motion is almost identical to last year.
yeah, thank you for that. I wasn't inquiring as in a negative manner. I just, because they do provide a service here that is probably helping a lot of people. It'd be nice to know some of their accomplishments. So as we go through the year, that's all, so, that's all. Thank you.
Councillor Evans?
Yeah, and I just think that's there because, without getting into it, there was an issue at some point about reports. And I think lately, we've got the kind of reports, either written or a presentation whenever we want one. And I think what that means, so that if we would like them to come and make a presentation, they've recently indicated they're willing to do that. So having that there was something I wanted. That's a condition of the money. We would red flag it in the registry. Yeah.
Okay. If there's a requirement or request of council to define this a little better in terms of what we expect of regular reporting, then we can just articulate that at some point. We can do that. Okay. Question on? Question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried.
I move that whereas council has adopted various bylaws and whereas the municipality wishes to ensure the proper enforcement of its bylaws by appointing an appropriate person to such position, now therefore be it resolved that the following persons are hereby authorized, designated, and appointed to act for and on council's behalf in order to properly enforce all the municipality's bylaws pursuant to the municipality's authority outlined below. Matthew Puddicombe, Nathan Denton, and Robin Ripley, effective June 4th, 2018. Be it further resolved that the above noted authorization, designation, and appointment is subject to the following: 92(1), 93(1), 94(1), and 98 of the Community Planning Act in order to enter upon property, issue orders, seek orders from the Court of Queen's Bench, and commence proceedings in provincial court. 100.2B, 101, 102.11, and 190.013 of the Municipalities Act in order to serve tickets, commence proceedings in provincial court, enter upon property, and issue notices for dangerous or unsightly premises. 14 of the Police Act in order to serve tickets and properly execute their role as a bylaw enforcement officer. Be it further resolved that the above noted authorization, designation, and appointment shall continue until the person ceases to be employed by the municipality or until the appointment is limited or rescinded by council.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Tower. Do you need any background on this? We do this on a regular basis, bylaw officers enforcing the town's bylaws.
Yeah, we always obtain 3 students from Oltons College in the policing and corrections course. So this year, these are the three students that were presented in front of us. Normally, we will get 4 or 5 that interviewed. It is an application process, though. So we interviewed them based on whether felt they'd fit. We do hire 3. It's within the budget, and each of them, I believe, have something different and positive to bring to the student bylaw positions for the summer.
Thank you. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That's it? Okay. Move to item D, Tourism and Business Development. Councillor Mitten, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will highlight some of the points from the report starting on page 38. The Bordertown Festival was held May 2nd to 6th, and it was a success. A full final report will be available for the June council meeting. As part of the celebration of the 30th anniversary of the Sackville Waterfowl Park, a trail naming contest is being held. A winning list of names will be announced at the Alzheimer's Walk in the Park on May 27th at 1 p.m. at the Visitor Information Center. Staff, along with Councillor Joyce O'Neill and Ray Fralick, attended the Saltscapes Expo April 20th to 22nd in Halifax. More than 1,000 visitor guides were distributed and more than 2,500 ginger snaps. The Visitor Information Center and Craft Gallery opened for the season on May 1st. We would like to welcome students Heidi Soper, Derek Sharp, Rebecca Grant, Caroline Hitchcock, and Laura Penny as our summer staff. The department held a successful subsidized food safety course on April 3rd with 23 local people in attendance. We anticipate that the highway sign replacement work will be getting underway and completed in May, and a motion for this work will be presented at this meeting. The 2018 visitor guide has been produced, and we are distributing it locally and regionally. The town was awarded $28,500 from the Environmental Trust Fund for our Sackville Waterfowl Park Welcome Center Renewal Project, which will allow us to replace our dated display at the Visitor Information Center with more modern interactive displays. So thank you to staff for applying, and congrats on getting that grant. And our promotional video project has been completed, and now we have 4 videos which we'll be distributing in the coming months via social media and other platforms. And I do have a motion, but I think first we're going to queue up some videos to show to everyone.
Mr. Burke?
I guess, Your Worship, before we hit play, I know we're running behind schedule, so the videos are all about a minute and 20 seconds in length, and there's 4 of them in total. So I'll leave it to council to make sure that we want to proceed and take the 4 to 5 minutes.
4 or 5 minutes?
I'd like to see it.
Yes.
Okay.
Appreciate the thought, though.
Everywhere you go, people are always smiling, willing to lend a hand, and they're just some of the best people in the world in this little town. So it's pretty unique.
I was never really given the opportunity to be myself, and I had to always try to become someone that I was not. And in Mane, it gave me this freedom to be who I was.
The friendships that you make here and the connections with profs and things like that, it's priceless here.
With all that attention from professors and other friends, you really feel like that you're set up for success in life, which is very special in this little place.
There's a lot of community programs. My son, he's learning how to skate, so we have the rink. There's other programs. There's soccer, football, hockey, like any other big city.
We live in the city for almost 10 years, and you kind of hit a point where you start to wonder, like, am I going to rent an apartment for the rest of my life if I continue to live here? I don't know how I can jump brackets of income until finally I'm able to afford to buy a house in a city like that. But moving out here and living in a place like this slowly started to become a reality, which is kind of amazing to be able to purchase a house and buy your own business and live and enjoy your life living in a town like this, where those things are a little bit more achievable, a little more realistic, I guess, which is nice. Yeah.
When your housing is one of your biggest costs, the low housing prices here, you'd be looking at an average home price of, say, $150,000 in Sackville versus, say, $750,000 in Calgary. So
I really think there's a lot of opportunities for folks to look into starting a business here. The town of Sackville can also help direct people to the right person if they have a question or have questions about starting a business here.
Something that pleased me to no end when I moved here, to see children walking to school. I saw kids walking to school and walking back and looking after each other.
It's more like, okay, what are we going to not do and what are we going to do, we find. And we do like to be doing things.
I did this for the doctors in this town. There's a lot of doctors. This is another advantage for coming here, is the fact that this town has its own hospital.
here, housing is a fraction of the cost. A fraction of the cost of what you get in Toronto. My house out here, I bought right out, cash, straight cash. I had it, and I was on an acre lot as opposed to a small postage stamp lot. Big house, 3 bedrooms.
Having accessibility to all of the music venues at the university. There's, you know, theater, there's arts, the museums, and all of those things are within a really condensed space of geography. So you can walk to things and meet new people with new ideas, and I think that it keeps you young.
A town that's very compatible with, I think, the deeper feelings that people have about where they're going to live as they get a little older and so on.
Well done. Well done. Yes, Councillor.
I thought that was pretty awesome in promoting our town, and I would suggest, if it's possible, that that be put up in our tourist bureau. So, and played there, so that people coming in, so they're not just seeing, going in the tourist bureau and looking for directions how to move on. It might encourage them to just look a little bit further. And after working down in Saltscapes, there's so many people that say, oh yeah, I know where Sackville is.
Drive by it.
We go into Tim Hortons or we gas up, but we try to encourage them to come down even into our tourist bureau. And some of them didn't even know that there was a tourist bureau there. I don't know how. And you're not even going to believe this, but one girl, I said to one lady, I said, we'd love to have you come up and stop and visit our little town, Sackville. She said, I didn't even know there was a town there. And I thought, well, are we stupid, or was she just kind of
Or is she?
off? I don't know, but it really shocked me. But I still say Saltscapes, it's an awesome place to go and hear the people that it's so many hundreds and hundreds of people said, oh, they somehow had been to Mount A, either as couples or students met and got married and had family, then their family comes back. It's just, so many had come, but they also come for the ginger snaps, don't they, Ron?
And they come to see you.
But anyway, it's a good few days down there, so. But, sure.
Thank you. Councillor Evans, sorry, Councillor Evans. Go ahead.
That funding that we got for the Visitor Information Center, was it, you have a specific plan for it, or could a kiosk with a screen with a loop be a possibility, just following up on?
Mr. Sparrows?
Thank you, Councillor. There is a certain amount of it is allocated for specific things, like we're probably going to do a water table and some sort of representation of an abido, but the rest of it is for displays and interactive things, so it's definitely a possibility.
Deputy Mayor Aiken, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to pass on congratulations from several of the businesses I talked to in town on the 2018 visitor guide. They said it was a great improvement over previous ones, and it was redone. So it was, they quite appreciated that.
Yep. I believe you have a motion, right? Councillor Mitten, please.
Thank you. I move that council approve the hiring of Hanson Signs to reprint and reinstall the Town of Sackville highway signs in the amount of $6,250.25, HST included.
Moved by Councillor Mitten, seconded by Deputy Mayor Aiken.
We just say finally?
Mr. Beal, would you like to provide a background on that, please?
Yeah, it is just over spending authority, and that's why the motion had to come forward to council, as it was over $6,000. Half of that will be claimed back through the insurance, because it is for the sign that was damaged, but half of it is for the alternate sign coming in the west direction, so that would not qualify, and it's within the budget allocations for 2018.
Question? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary minded? None? Thank you. Motion is carried. That's it. Councillor Mitten, that's it for your section, right? Move to item E, public properties and facilities. Councillor Tower.
Thank you, Worship. The information is on page 40 and 41. Public Works Department continues to repair potholes with the hot patch machine throughout the town and continue through the 2018 patching program. Public Works started to utilize a street sweeper to clean gutters, streets around the town. Great weather is here. Public staff has put up the park benches, bike racks, kiosks all around the town for the month of April. And the public works staff have started to perform the spring cleanup for damaged areas due to the winter controls. That will continue throughout the spring. The utility department continued to work on the evaluation of water meters that did not read properly during the last water meter reads. They will work throughout the April fixing and replacing water meters or MX units. Engineering department worked with Recreation and Parks Facilities Department to prepare and issue a tender for a new event tent during the month of April. A motion will be coming forward during this meeting tonight from the Recreation Department. Engineering and Public Works Department continue to work with Meritech Construction and Sackville Plumbing and Heating to installation of in-floor heating and pouring concrete slab in a new storage facility, and it should be done pretty soon now. The engineering department continued to work with Crandall Engineering Limited on the environmental impact assessment process of phase 2 for the Lawrence Street reconstruction and stormwater mitigation project. After many months of consultation, the Department of Environment and Local Government regarding the environmental impact assessment, they have finally received the approval and the final determination from the Minister of Environment. So based on the determinations, they are now working closely with Crandall Engineering to finalize the design and prepare a tender package for phase 2. Once that design is finalized, the town will hold a public information session and present the details. Dwayne, would you like to give any background on that otherwise?
Sure, thank you, Councillor Tower. As indicated, we finally did get our determination, and as indicated in previous meetings, there was no real surprises there. Most of the determinations we were aware of, which is what I kind of indicated to Council before. We can't do any work in the wetlands during the nesting season, but there is some work that can be done on some of the crossings. So we're working with Crandall to get the tender done based on these determinations, and we'll have to have special clauses in there to say when certain work can be done. So we're working on that as we speak, and hope to have that ready to go to tender within the next week or two. And then I'll be working with Jamie and other staff to try to put together a date for the public information session for the public to kind of unveil the phase 2. So stay tuned for that.
Thank you, the Civic Center, the Department of Public Safety did an inspection of the Civic Center in April. And the inspection concentrated on ammonia safety. A few things remaining to be done. However, the inspector said the town of Sackville is out in front when it comes to safety of the staff and public compared to other municipalities who own rinks. Staff have painted the dressing rooms at the Civic Center as part of the spring maintenance. Vinyl lacrosse and is in every Tuesday and Wednesday evening at the Civic Center until the end of June. Field lacrosse has been used in the field behind the Civic Center on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Several meetings and training courses were held at the Civic Center, such as first aid for both staff and students, the Rod and Gun Club annual dinner and auction, seniors college registration, and chainsaw safety course for the town staff. The town would like to acknowledge the retirement of Phil, now that's a tough one for me, Wasilki, thank you, and Mark Adams of the Public Works, Parks and Facilities Department, and we'd like to thank them for their many years of service and wish them the best. Municipal Parks, preparations underway to do repairs of the trails and bridges in the Waterfowl Park. Snow fence has been installed at the cover bridge in the Waterfowl Park to keep the geese from harassing the public who are trying to enjoy the park. Snow fence has been installed along the floating boardwalk in the Waterfowl Park to try and prevent ATV traffic through the Waterfowl Park. The town bylaw officer, RCMP, and off-road enforcement have been notified and will help keep an eye on the problem. Disc golf is in full swing at Beach Hill Park with their first tournament starting at the end of May. Is that a free tournament?
It's a competitive tournament, but you can go up and watch for free, yeah.
Staffing will be working to install banners around the town, as well as the new Bill Johnson Memorial Park banners over the next few weeks. The exterior washrooms have been opened for the summer at both Bill Johnson Memorial Park and Lilas Fawcett Park. Tennis courts have been open for the summer in the Bill Johnson's Park. The street tree program will continue this summer with concentration in the newly reconstructed Lorne Street. The new half-ton crew cab truck has arrived and has been added to the Parks and Facilities Department vehicle fleet. And the majority of the summer students for both Parks and Facilities and Public Works started work on April 30th of the summer, and we welcome them and look forward to a productive summer. And that is my report, and there are no motions, so it's just open for questions.
Questions on the report? Comments? I think I'd like to make two comments. One is that we heard today about the importance of downtown green space, and there's 55 acres of Waterfowl Park adjacent to the downtown, and we're adding to it with a donation which will be announced in the very near future. You spoke about the environmental impact assessment and changing the seats area around James Street into a more accessible habitat plus recreation plus water maintenance, another 2 acres there. We have planted over 150 trees in the 2 years this council's been here, and we're continuing to do that, as you noted, along Lorne Street to expand the trees down along there. So I would like to just note that, because it sounded that we weren't doing anything at all in this area, and I think we can take some pride in some of the things that have happened in the last 2 years. So that's my comment on your report. Any other comments? Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to, I do want to remind folks that we have a bylaw that says we're supposed to end at 10 o'clock. We have a lot of motions to go through. Oh, don't tell them.
Bill was the one who started, it was 10 o'clock.
Okay. Item F, recreation programs and events. Councillor Butcher.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have been known to speak quickly, and today I'm going to attempt that. So, my report starts on page 42 through to page 44. The Recreation Programs and Events Liaison Group met on April 30th. I'm going to highlight some of our highlights. Poetry Month was a huge success. The town hosted several events and another popular poetry writing contest. There was a large crowd, topped off the month in council chambers for our open mic event. Our poet laureate Marilyn Lurch and local writer Shoshana Wingate for their hard work. Our summer programs coordinator has started work, and a full schedule of summer programs and events will be released on May 20th of this month. Operation Beautification was held on Thursday, May 10th, and we had several groups and individuals show up to help tidy our town. The Sackville Sports Wall of Fame induction ceremony will take place on June 14th at the Tantramar Veterans Memorial Civic Center at 7, and we encourage the public to come out and show their support for this year's inductees, Steve Ridlington, Earl Thompson, and Heather Smith. And our third annual Volunteer Recognition Night will be held in late June, and nomination forms for our 10+, 25+, and 50+ years of service and youth categories are now available at sackville.com. The fourth annual Beach Hill Park Challenge obstacle course race will be held on July 21st, and there will be a newly designed 4-kilometer course then. Staff is pleased to host the Wild Wonder Forest School at Beach Hill Park 3 days per week over the summer months. The staff is working on a more formal arrangement to potentially have Beach Hill as a permanent home for the forest school, which will be presented to council in the near future. And the Recreation Master Planning process continues to advance after releasing 3 online surveys. There was the youth one, the Mount A students and residents, and hosting 3 focus groups, public, local sports groups, and TRHS students. And we will continue to gather information over the summer months using pop-up stations at events and high-traffic areas throughout the town. The Regional Recreation Master Plan continues to progress, and we would like to say that Mark Legier, a Mount A alumni and former trail master of the Fundy Footpath, will be joining the Southeast Regional Service Commission on the 22nd of this month as the new Regional Trails Coordinator. And there will be a motion to approve the purchase of the new special events tent to follow this report. And staff was successful in securing a Green Jobs grant to cover 50% of the costs of one of our summer programmers' salary. An motion is coming on that. Fall Fair planning is well underway and will be held on September 20th to 23rd this year. And there are several motions to follow. And I'd like to pass on to Matt Pride to give us a bit of an update on what motions we're doing for the Fall Fair.
Sure, thank you, Councillor. Well, the only thing that's changed on the list that you have is that we're not going to be presenting the motion for the agreement with Mount Allison on the King Street field. We sent it off to the insurance company. We're just waiting for some information back from them before we send it to the council.
The library report is found on page 44. Numbers continue to be better than many 2-person libraries, so the librarian is starting to compile statistics to request that Sackville officially become a 2-person library. And then there are some more stats about how popular it is. The meeting room was used 15 times, and in April the library ran 10 adult programs and with 21 participants. There were 6 young adult programs, 17 children's programs, and there was included a weekly Next Step to Kindergarten program and No School Day family movie afternoon. And the summer activity leader will be beginning work on June 5th. And that is my report.
Questions on the report? The quickly read one? No? You have multiple motions.
I have multiple motions. Thank you. I move that council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign and seal the agreement between the Canada Parks and Recreation Association, CPRA, and the town of Sackville for the Green Jobs Initiative funding program.
Moved by Councillor Butcher, seconded by Councillor Mitten. Anybody like to talk to that, or are you okay? We did have a good discussion Comfortable? Okay. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Now some motions regarding Fall Fair. I move that council grant a time exemption from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. as per bylaw number 246, the Town of Sackville Noise Bylaw, Section 5, for the Fall Fair activities to be held on Friday, September 21st, 2018, and Saturday, September 22nd, 2018.
Moved by Councillor Butcher, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Councillor Butcher.
I move that council grant the temporary street closure of the portion of Ford Lane from behind the post office to the York Street entrance on Friday, September 21st, 2018, beginning at 7 a.m. until Monday, September 24th, 2018 at 1 p.m. in order to facilitate the installation and use of a tent for community events during the Fall Fair.
Moved by Councillor Butcher, seconded by Councillor Tower. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you.
I move that council grant permission to the Fall Fair Organizing Committee to operate a bar service in a secured area in the main stage tent on Friday, September 21st, 2018, and Saturday, September 22nd, 2018, subject to provincial liquor and safety laws.
Moved by Councillor Butcher, seconded by Councillor Mitten. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
I move that council authorize the closure of Main Street from King Street to Queens Road and Queens Road from Main Street to Salem Street on Saturday, September 22nd, 2018, from approximately 12:30 p.m. to 2 p.m. for the Fall Fair Parade.
Moved by Councillor Butcher, seconded by Councillor Mitten. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you.
I move that council authorize the fire chief, as part of the Fall Fair events, to complete an application to purchase with MAC Fireworks Incorporated for a commercially organized and operated fireworks display at the Tantramar Regional High School Lower Field on Friday, September 21st, 2018, with a rain date of Saturday, September 22nd, 2018, in the amount of $7,999, HST included. I furthermore authorize the mayor and clerk to sign and seal the necessary agreement for the said event.
Moved by Councillor Butcher, seconded by Councillor Evans.
Question?
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried.
I move that council award a grant of $3,000 to Kristen Doncaster for the 2018 Family Day at Doncaster Farm event from the Recreation Programs and Events Fall Fair budget.
Moved by Councillor Butcher, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried.
I move that council award tender number 2018-08 for the supply of one only new event tent and accessories to the lowest bidder, Commercial Tent Rentals and Sales Limited of Sussex MB in the amount of $41,055, HST included.
Moved by Councillor Butcher, seconded by Councillor Evans. Councillor Evans?
Really appreciate you racing through this, but I think perhaps staff should explain a little bit what we're doing here.
Yes.
It's a significant thing. This is not something that happens every year.
Mr. Acton, are you? Is it Mr. Pride? Okay.
Sure, thank you, Councillor. Back when we were going through our capital budgeting process, council approved the purchase of, or $40,000 plus HST to purchase an event tent. So we went through the tendering process. Our current tent is 40 by 80 feet, and we rent an additional 20 feet each year. So we were looking to purchase a tent that would be the full 40 by 100 feet. That would, allow us to save a little bit of money on tent rental each year. There was a couple different options that we put out there for the tenders, but at the end of the day, the commercial tent and rental company was the only bidder that met our requirements for the option, or sorry, for the first tent system. The second tent system, we had one bidder that met the requirements, but significantly more expensive.
Thank you. We had that in detail at the discussion meeting. That was very helpful. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary minded? Motion is carried.
And my last one, I move that council grant the temporary closure of Main Street from the corner of York Street and Bridge Street to Wellington Street with barriers, also at the entrance of Ford Lane from Main Street and the entrance of Allison Avenue at Main Street from 5:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. on Friday, July 6th, 2018, to accommodate a Cruise to Sackville antique car event.
Moved by Councillor Butcher, seconded by Councillor Tower. Councillor O'Neill, do you want to just speak to that at all? Councillor O'Neill, please.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I was approached by some of the antique car owners and said they'd love to cruise to Sackville some evening. So in order to do that, we felt that the Main Street was the place to hold it, which will allow angle parking and so on. And I think we're planning on maybe some music that night, and I don't know what all else. I could pass that on to Matt, but anyway, I do thank, on behalf of the antique car people, I thank the councillors for.
We haven't voted for it.
I know you haven't, but you don't dare do anything else. So, Matt, if you would just kind of, I don't know what else you have planned for that evening for us, or if it's still just sort of.
Mr. Pride?
Thank you. No, we have had some preliminary discussions with a couple musical acts, but we have been waiting for the motion to pass before we really move forward in too much detail. Yeah.
Okay, thank you both. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. That ends it for you there? Yes. Excellent, thank you. We move on to item G, public safety. Who's starting?
I'll start with the
Councillor O'Neill.
Fire Department. The Sackville Fire and Rescue responded to 18 calls for service in the month of April, which included 9 grass fires, 4 motor vehicle collisions, 3 commercial fire alarms, 1 structure fire, and 1 utility pole. The total number of calls for service up to date in 2018 are down compared to the same time frame last year. Of course, the members have been busy with training sessions that took place during the month. First aid, CPR, and AED orientation and training on the new pumper tanker, and station and equipment checks. They also had 8 officers attend an 8-hour emergency elevator evacuation training course at the fire department, along with staff from Mount Allison University and several members from Amherst and Riverview. The fire department would express their sincere thank you to the community of Sackville and surrounding areas for the attendance at their annual pancake and maple syrup breakfast. It was a terrific breakfast, and they were really, I guess it's the biggest breakfast event they've had to date. They're serving almost 400 people. Of course, their new pumper truck, I guess, has been out already, so attending some of the fires and so on, and I'm sure the boys and girls out there all appreciate their new vehicle. The fire department, just a reminder that fires are prohibited within the town limits. The outdoor fires, if you wish to have a little fire in your backyard, you must have an outdoor wood-burning appliance designed to hold a small fire, and it's for decorative purposes only. As always, the chief reminds us that we should ensure that we have a basic emergency kit prepared to last 72 hours. And I guess that really, when we look at the flooding, we realize how important it is that we are prepared. And we also have to sort of remind ourselves that it's not just the flooding that can cause grief for us. So I guess it's a good thing for all of our homes to try to see that we do have something there. And I guess that's all of my report. Thank you. If there's any questions, I'd ask you just to ask the chief.
Questions on fire? Hearing none. Police, Councillor Black.
Thank you very much. The police report and CPO report are found on pages 46 to 48. Calls for service related to property crime in the total Sackville detachment area were consistent from March at 92 to April at 88. However, within the town limits, calls declined from 27 to 18, and no discernible crime trends were identified related to these calls. Uniformed members conducted 5 foot patrols as well as 20 school visits. Some of these were related to school and CPO related initiatives. 20 various tickets were written in the community. Sergeant Gagnier met with the university to improve communication and start planning for the start of the school year next September. There will be an operational plan developed to enhance some enforcement initiatives which are intended to complement other community initiatives. On the human resources aspect, a member is set to be transferred in June, and a replacement also arriving in June. The CPO report is 47 and 48. And as usual, he's busy at the 3 schools and Mount Allison with frequent visits. To highlight some of his community endeavors, he is keeping the usual visits to the hospital, addiction services, school counselors to maintain a relationship with them as they are his diversion committee. 2 positive tickets were issued in April. And he does continuous work with MAD Canada and is still looking for volunteers. And he was also given the task to manage the RCMP auxiliary program for the Sackville area. And he's looking to recruit new volunteers in the coming months. Aside from his regular committees that keep him ridiculously busy, he had 2 active adult files and 17 active youth files. And he also had various presentations and workshops in the month as well. That's my report.
Thank you, Councillor Black. I would also note that the RCMP joined us in the VE Day procession, including 1 member in Red Surge and another 2 that came to block the intersection for the Legion to walk through it safely. We very much appreciate that. Doesn't show on the report, but it's another one of those things that they do for us. Any questions on fire or police? Hearing none. There are no motions, I don't believe. We can move to item H, policy and bylaw. Councillor Evans.
Policy Bylaw Liaison Group met on Thursday, April 19th. Meeting group reviewed Bylaw 262, a bylaw to regulate street traffic in its entirety, which identified all the changes, additions, deletions that have been discussed over the last several months. Meeting group reviewed all the sections of the bylaw from parking, speed limit, signage, and the addition of new streets. The meeting group also reviewed policy number 02/98, inventory control policy, which was passed in 1998 and states that department heads shall issue purchase order numbers for any expenditure over $50. However, a subsequent policy, accounts payable processing policy, which was passed in 2007, states that a purchase order is to be completed for any purchase over $100. Considering the accounts payable processing policy supersedes the inventory control policy, there is no benefit in having it. It is recommended to forward policy number 02/98, inventory control policy, for appeal to this meeting. And I have a motion regarding that. So if there are not any questions, I will at first though speak. We could have had 2 motions. Oh, sorry.
You have a question, Deputy
Fair
Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. One thing that came out of the streets bylaw we were talking about was reducing the speed to 20 kilometers in certain roads. And the CEO questioned whether we could do that, and we already have it. The right angle turn off on Cattail Ridge coming off the bridge over the Trans-Canada is currently posted at 20. So apparently we can do that.
That's interesting. And that's a nice segue into what I was going to make, is that if we brought the recommendation, the Policy Bylaw Committee had a recommendation for the street traffic bylaw. It came to discussion, and we had a really good discussion. Out of that came several, what I thought, without prejudging, really good suggestions. So it's been referred back to Policy Bylaw, that being one of the suggestions. And I just like that when the process works, that you come up with something, other people look at it, suggestions come up, we go back to the drawing board, try to get it right. However, one thing made through the cut, something which is pretty obvious, we're going to repeal that policy, which is no longer relevant. So I move that council repeal policy number 0/98, inventory control policy.
Try that number again.
02/98,
There you
or
go.
/98.
Okay. Seconded by.
If I get it
moved by
right, you'll
Councillor
second it,
Evans,
right?
Seconded by Councillor Mitten.
Sorry.
Question?
Question.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you.
That's it.
That's it for policy bylaw. We'll move to personnel. Is that,
Following is an overview of recent activities during the past month. The council liaison meeting was held on May 3rd. As of last pay period in April, there were 38 permanent employees, 3 temporary employees, crossing guards and recreation employees. There are 2 outstanding grievances relating to staffing that have been referred to arbitration, and it's coming up mid-June. On April 20th, an employee appreciation luncheon was held in each of the department areas of work. Pleased to say that most of our employees were able to attend. This past month, 2 letters were received from Mr. Phil Wasilki and Mark Adams advising of their interest to retire effective May 1st. Mr. Wasilki has been an employee as an arena attendant at the Civic Center for the town for approximately 10 years, as well as a further 5 years in the same capacity with the Civic Center prior to the town taking on the ownership of the facility. Mr. Adams has also been with the town as an area attendant, temporary, for the past 10 years. Both employees have made significant contributions to the arena in serving the public and will be missed, and we wish them well in their retirement. And I have one motion.
Just prior to that, I just want to make one comment on the rink attendants, as I saw them in 10 months of the year in my experiences up there, and they were both excellent, understood client service, and were always willing to help. So there's big shoes to fill for the next group that has to do that. So my personal thoughts are that I'm sorry they're going, but I wish them well in their retirement and appreciate all the work they did for the community. Councillor Evans.
Okay. I move that council ratify the decision of a closed in-camera meeting of May 15th, 2018, dealing with personnel.
Moved by Councillor Evans, seconded by Councillor Mitten. Question?
Question?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you.
That's it.
Corporate Affairs and Strategic Development. Councillor Mitten.
Thank you, Your Worship. All right, I will do my best to move quickly through some of the highlights from the report, starting on page 51. Let's see, staff have authorized the work to the New Brunswick Department of Transportation and Infrastructure overhead sign structures at exit 504 and 506. The work will see the reference to Bridge Street replaced with Sackville Centre in 4 locations. On April 11th, the town partnered with Mount Allison's Marketing and Communications Department to host a social media training session. The opportunity was presented to review best practices, look at different tools, and discuss ways to use social media to reach and engage with our residents. It was very valuable, and we want to thank Mount Allison for their assistance and sharing their expertise. Unfortunately, the town's application to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities under their Municipal Climate Innovation Program to repurpose the Pickard Quarry into a stormwater management pond and recreational area was not successful. We are very disappointed about the result, given the amount of time and resources invested in submitting the application. We will continue to monitor the FCM's funding opportunities as well as others to see if the project is eligible under future programs. And I'd like to invite Mr. Burke to elaborate on this.
Please.
Thank you, Councillor Mitten. Typically what we do as part of our regular reporting is that we do just that. We report to council on a monthly basis. So this particular item caused quite a stir over the last few days, where there was a bit of a misunderstanding in the community where council was going to be voting or discussing at great lengths to what next with the quarry. So the purpose of tonight's meeting was simply just to advise council that the application that we made to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities under the Municipal Climate Innovation Program was turned down by FCM. So I guess we should at least elaborate on the reasoning that we were provided. So it's as Councillor Mitten's indicated, it's certainly frustrating and disappointing. I think we certainly, Dwayne and I see the benefits of this application, especially when 80-cent dollars are potentially on the table for a large grant. We don't get these opportunities very often. So while they complimented our application for being innovative, et cetera, they also provided that the peer reviewers raised a few concerns, one of which was that we didn't submit a copy of the town's overall stormwater management plan. So that was one. Second was that we didn't provide enough supporting data to substantiate the climate change claim that we were making. Was two. They felt we lacked some information regarding the overall structure and relationship between the town and engineering consultants and landscape architects that would be designing and helping us oversee the work. It's not the first time we've engaged consultants to help us through a project, so we're not entirely sure where some of these comments came from. Confirmation on the property purchase would have been beneficial to the review. As you know, we do not presently own the quarry. That property is owned by Mount Allison University, who provided a letter of support for our application. Overall preliminary design plans that would help form the basis of the stormwater management design would have been helpful. That's one of the comments. And then lastly, they indicated, it was reported that the quarry was used at a landfill. And it was suggested the municipality ensure that the groundwater table is not contaminated by leachate. So we know the quarry was never a landfill. So to make a long story short, I think you can see the frustration that we may have with the response that we were given. We've voiced our concern and frustration with the comments that we received back to the program manager with FCM. And they've given us some indication that they're going to look to see if the project may fit somewhere else. And that's, of course, no promise at that point. So I guess what happens now is that I think we would look to either perhaps hear from the Tantramar Outdoor Club, who's made a informal request, I guess, to approach council in June to have a discussion about what they see as maybe the next steps now that the funding is off the table from the federal government. I think what we need to keep in mind is that as part of our 2018 capital project budget, council allocated $200,000 to match the Federation of Canadian Municipality funding, but that money was contingent upon us receiving the funds from FCM. So if there's going to be any type of action or investment in the quarry, that's a discussion that needs to be held amongst council. We would need a new motion to reallocate that money in some other way, which we would do internally and then provide, as you know, a regular recommendation to council. So at this point in time, we would expect coming back to council in June with at least to start to facilitate the discussion on what may be next or plan B, if one so exists for the quarry.
Okay. Councillor Evans, you.
Really good explanation. I just wanted to make the comment because this is flattering in a way, because this is damn near the first time we have not been successful in a grant application. And that's punching above your weight. We've been hugely successful getting grants. And so because you guys have been so successful doing that, we take it for granted that when we plan this, you're going to come back with this. Those reasons also don't seem to pass the sniff test for me. So I'm glad that you've gone back to them. Lots of times you're not successful if something else was better or there was something wrong, but some of those just, anyway. So kudos to you, and that it's a really good explanation, because a lot of people have asked about this meeting to me, and I said, we're going to get a report, we're going to go through a grieving process, and then we're going to decide, okay, where do we go from here? But anything else is going to require thought, a plan, discussion, and a vote. So we got lots of time.
Thank you both. Councillor Mitten.
So I have one more update, and then I have some motions to come forward. So the next update is on heritage. Over the past 5 months, Council has been reviewing the heritage program, including potential bylaw changes, administrative procedures, future appointments, and the town's heritage grant program. This review has been comprehensive. During this time, there have been no heritage permit applications or requests. In fact, over the course of the year, there were no heritage permits issued by the heritage officer or heritage board. Furthermore, there was only one $5,000 heritage grant issued in both 2016 and 2017. The town's heritage bylaw, being bylaw number 249, which was enacted in April 2016, takes a very elementary attempt in regulating heritage. Instead, and which was discussed at the time of drafting and adopting, the bylaw focuses instead on the appearance of the streetscape as opposed to traditional heritage regulation. The point has been raised that the bylaw is achieving very little in terms of heritage conservation and preservation. Furthermore, the town's heritage program has been difficult to administer due to the legislative framework from which it must operate, and there has been limited community support for the program in general. Recruiting volunteers to serve on the Heritage Board has also been challenging. As a result, it is being suggested that the town focus its attention and resources on ways to enhance programs to support redevelopment of heritage stock through the appearance and maintenance of properties. This is specifically noted in the objectives of Action 12 of our strategic plan. Moreover, it was also suggested that the town continue to support the Tantramar Heritage Trust, whose mandate is to promote the preservation of heritage resources in the Tantramar region. The trust does an exemplary job and is well respected around the region and province for its success. For these reasons, it is therefore being recommended that Council commence the process to consider the repeal of Bylaw 249, Town of Sackville Heritage Conservation Area Bylaw, with the intention of finding more effective means to support heritage within our community. This change is felt to better represent the views of our community. Should these views change, then Council, with the support of staff and the community at large, can reevaluate the overall heritage program and potential for a future regulatory framework if they so wish.
Any questions on the report? You have two motions.
Yes, thank you. So the first motion, I move that Council authorize the mayor and clerk to, sorry.
Just one second.
Oh, my apologies. Oh,
Sorry, forgot about that.
I was too quick.
Recuse. Oh, well. Okay.
Okay, we'll try this again. I move that Council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign and seal the purchase and sale agreement and all other relative documents for the sale of property located in the industrial park identified as PID number 70515010 as per the offer presented at the closed in-camera meeting of May 7th, 2018.
Moved by Councillor Mitten, seconded by Councillor Tower. Question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
Okay. Whereas Council is considering the repeal of bylaw number 249, Town of Sackville Municipal Heritage Conservation Area Bylaw, I move that Council set the council meeting of Monday, June 11th, 2018 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers at the Town Hall, 31 Main Street, 2nd floor, Sackville, MB, as the date, time, and place for the consideration of objections to the proposed repeal of bylaw number 249. The Municipal Heritage Conservation Area Bylaw, which describes the area affected by the bylaw, which can be viewed at Sackville Town Hall or on the town's website. Do I have to read the? Okay, which the link can be found here. It is on the town website. Furthermore, that the necessary steps be taken to ensure that the notice requirements under Section 56 of the Heritage Conservation Act be fulfilled.
Moved by Councillor Mitten, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Evans, please.
Just as we always do, we are starting the process. I'm not going to speak about this motion now. We are going to start the process. We will have a public meeting. We will get input, and we can go through the steps now. But I speak in favor of this motion to start that process.
Any other councillors wish to speak to this motion on the floor? No? Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Just one moment while we gather Deputy Mayor back in. And we will note, does anyone have new business arising? Any other comments on your report? You were good? Okay, so we will go to item 10, which is new business. No one has new business. Okay, question period. Press.
I have a very quick question on procedure. As I understand it, having given first reading to the Lafford rezoning tonight, it would be possible at next meeting, regular meeting in June, for you to give second, and third reading if council so chooses. Am I right?
That'd be correct, yes.
That. My other question has to do with Councillor Mitten's motion, the details of which I'm not familiar with. The purchase of that property in the industrial park, is that the property that Terra Beata wants to purchase?
No, it is not. We cannot talk anymore until that it's
Okay.
done, right?
Okay, thank
But
you.
it is not Terra Beata.
Just a quick question about the heritage bylaw and the public hearing coming up for it to be repealed. I'm just wondering, I know when it was first enacted, probably over 10 years ago. I'm not sure exactly when it was enacted, but there was a lot of discussion and debate then about whether to enact this bylaw. And I'm just wondering now, is it just that you feel it's not warranted anymore? It's run its course? It's, I guess, just a question about that.
I'll speak to that. It's, I think that there's been frustration with how it's been operationalized for quite some time. And when we started to look at the review in the last 5-6 months, we were finding out that there had actually been no permits issued at all. And that in essence, when we really drilled into it, the intent of the original bylaw was simply one of an appearance as opposed to a true heritage bylaw that would dive into more than just a streetscape appearance. So we were frustrated over the history of how it had been done, but also understanding that it was actually achieving its original objectives, which was a simply very shallow heritage interpretation. So it didn't seem to us that this was doing much good, quite frankly, and that we looked at what some of the other options would be at this point and suggest that the town's better off if we were to take an opportunity. Actually, we heard today, one of the speakers in the presentations said that we don't invest in heritage. They're right, we didn't give out very many grants, so we're now thinking that maybe that's a more appropriate way for the town to support the type of heritage that we've been talking about at this point.
Thank you.
Okay. Is it for press from the gallery? Anybody else?
I just have a couple of small comments. In terms of, I think, a little bit of recreation and access on some of the sidewalks for persons with disabilities. And in particular, and I'm not sure if you can ride a scooter, disability scooter on our sidewalks, but there's been a couple of things that have come up recently that we've noticed. The Wall of Fame, when it was relocated with the little platforms like with the plaques on them, when they were installed, they were set back, but with a scooter being used on the sidewalk and other people passing in both directions, they're not set back far enough to appropriately allow a scooter to go and people to walk at the same time. So consideration for future things that may be like that should be looked at in terms of how they are placed to allow free flow. And I suspect that over the next few years, we'll have more people with disabilities using things like scooters.
Right.
As well, I was glad to hear that in the Waterfowl Park, the repairs to washouts and things like that are being started and done. In particular, there's a position behind the Doncaster Farm and behind the Drew Nursing Home, where the boardwalk meets the dirt, that a scooter can't come up over that. So in our particular case, we have an individual that cannot walk the distance home should her scooter get stuck there. So, and I think over the last 3 years, this has been a recurring problem at that particular place, where it washes out and she can't get up on that area or down off of that area. I'm glad to see that she's able to go out around the community and enjoy the waterfowl park, but it does pose a few little problems when trying to maneuver through it with a scooter or in even walking. So I would ask council to perhaps approach individuals that have particular mobility issues and consult with them, do a walk-through, a drive-through, or whatever it takes to actually see the difficulties that an individual has in real life, in real terms, so that then you better understand what may be or may not be needed to make it more accessible. And the third one was, oh, yes. Last summer, we had a couple of businesses in town who put wooden ramps at their doorways to assist individuals to come in and out of their establishments, which is a wonderful idea, but those don't always work for individuals that are using things like a walker or a cane, and where they're positioned, where the doors open and close. I don't know whether or not that is something that council should look at, or if that is something that it's a business establishment issue to be looked at. But it does cause more difficulty in getting in than it doesn't, depending on your mobility issue. So our town tries very hard with new construction and things that are happening around to accommodate people with mobility issues, but we still have a long ways to go with that. So I would ask that we start to consult with those people, with individuals that have mobility issues, to help us become a better, more accessible place. Thank you.
Could you just say your name for the record?
My name is Marita Webb.
Thank you. CAO, please.
I'd be interested in just talking with you further, to work with you, to find out from people that are physically challenged and having accessibility issues. I appreciate we do have lots of challenges out there, and so the more input we could have from you or anyone else in the community to help us better understand that, I'd appreciate it if you could touch base with us.
Certainly, we will do that. And we're in a building phase now, so now's the time to do that, where we're changing over parks and recreation pathways and things like that. So it's a wonderful time to start to do that.
And on the ramps, it was done by the Age Friendly Group in connection with a group out of Toronto that had them designed at the high school. So I'll speak to them, and perhaps they could get some input from you as well.
Sure, okay.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
You very much. Inclusion's I mean, we try hard, and what we heard tonight, I hadn't heard before, and I really appreciate that you brought that forward.
The disabilities in person, in place. We can do it theoretically, we can imagine it, but it doesn't work until you actually put a person in this place, in reality, and actually go through the motions with them, of walking with them, seeing where the problems lie, things like that. So
thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Keith Carter, I had one question that I had was for Lori on this red flagging they're going to do on deeds and that. And if you do some work on your house, you have to have it inspected every time, like for 3 or 4 different articles that she was talking about. Well, to get an inspector to look at them, I think that my thing is on it, that it should be a 24-hour thing, not say we'll be here in 2 weeks' time to look at it like that. If they're going to implement something like that for an inspection, it has to be a timely inspection.
Is that a regional service function? So you probably should be talking to me, because I'm on the regional service board.
Okay, oh, I thought it was Lori, okay.
So if that's a question of staffing and the regional service board delivery of that, is it not?
It is to a certain degree. There's also the town building bylaw, which also affects inspections as well. So, I mean, it is a planning service that's provided as part of that, our agreement between the town. I will say there is requirements now when there's inspections that are required for individuals to give, it's usually 24-hour notice that they need their inspection. So it's put on the applicant to notify us that they've done the appropriate things that need to be done at each phase that requires an inspection. So within that, we make every accommodation to meet that time frame. Once the individual contacts us and says, I need my backfill, for instance, backfill inspection, we would make the accommodation to be there within that time frame of, usually they range between 24 hours and 48 hours would be the longest, so.
No, well, I know I've run into this before, and you call up and they say, oh, we didn't get the message or something else, and that's why I want to push it, that it's be in a timely manner, so that people will follow it. One other question I did have for your worship, you told me some stuff the last time I was here on the wages, and then there was a special wage that you gave everybody in this room an increase on that. I wanted to know what the percentage was, because we've had this before, and it comes back that nobody really knows what the percentage of the wages hikes were. The workers have just as much cost as the bosses do, and when you're asking them to take 1% and then they give the bosses top-up raise on top of it, and you know that causes tension in the town workers.
Mr. Bill, do you want to respond? I think we had a public, the percentage was in the motion, I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the comment, you're right, when the wages aren't in line with one another in terms of the management group and the union employees, tensions grow. And I think the mayor explained previously that the union wages outpaced the management wages, and a catch-up was done a couple, just in a year or two ago. So that was part of what contributed to the differential in the wages.
No, I understand this, but like over the last 20 years, we've had a whole bunch of these catch-ups, okay? And every time you turn around, you get the regular raise, plus they get a catch-up.
I think it sounds good, but it's not accurate. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I've seen them probably 3 times in the last 20 years, and that, like, when you're playing catch-up, you don't have to catch up every 5 years. But anyway, that was the question that I had for the mayor, because I never did get the percentage of what the extra raise was.
That was in the motion, was it not, Mr. Bill? Yeah.
Well, I don't believe it was in the motion, but we provided the salary scales for all managers.
Yeah.
And that's what we're required to provide.
But that wasn't what I asked. I asked the percentage that each, the raise. I didn't ask what you made, just how much your raise in percentage was.
This was the extra part that we spoke about,
the extra
not
part.
the.
Yeah, they gave me the 1%, and then they said it was the same as the employees. And then, after you got there in the wording that they had, you said that was a top-up. Okay, well, I asked what the percentage of the top-up. I didn't care how much money it was. I just wanted to know the percentage that it was, so that the next time it happens, I would have it written down, and I could say, well, you gave yourselves this much that time. Why would you want it again?
They didn't give themselves.
Council gave it to them, but, well, okay, well, council gave it to them, but I'm just saying, this is the thing. They got a top-up, and it has happened before. I know that. But anyway.
All right, so Keith, we'll look into that, and I'll get back to you with it.
Okay, good, that's it. And a question for Dwayne, have you heard anything more on CN on the culverts?
Specifically which culverts? I've spoke to him about a few different culverts, so.
Crescent Street and Charles Street, like where they plowed through them and tore them up.
No, I have not heard back from them on that, no.
Did you ask them on those ones?
I've had discussions with them on all the culverts, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And
No,
I-
I'm
and
just
I-
wondering because,
As I noted, Keith, that I've dealt with their corporate person, I'm now asking for the VP, because we want to get some answers to this.
okay. Is phase 2 been approved yet?
The EIA has, the terms of the EIA have been relayed to us, and now they're in design of what the phase 2 will look like,
So it's been approved to go?
with terms and conditions attached to it, yeah. We're now looking at the design and meeting those terms and conditions.
Other question I have is the quarry property. Why would the town want a quarry?
The town wanted a retention pond with the water modeling of Lorne Street with all the improvements. There was an understanding that the acute rainfall events that are still going to happen could still overpower that. And so if you could get 10 to 15% delayed running down there, that won't happen. And so what we saw in the Pori was a detention pond. In order to take that, we have to take ownership of it. So then the question becomes, what else do you do with it? Do you simply fence it off, or do you do it and design it in a way that you can use it for other purposes? So that was what the original grant proposal we put in, was that combination. And we didn't get the money, so as you heard, we now have to figure out what we want to do.
The 200,000 that you put in it will go back into?
Well, council will have to decide whether it just goes back into other things or whether they're going to do something along that line. And there will have to be a resolution of council if they choose to use the money for a purpose like that.
Okay. And one final question is, I've sat on it since last fall when one of the former councillors asked me or was telling me about it. And all of our bosses are supposed to be looking out for the best interest of the town. And the one that sort of caught my interest was when I was told about their bird down at Lounsbury's or down at Dooley's. And after we did everything else, Mr. Burke gave the contractor a $6,000 bonus of our money for doing such a good job. I guess, I don't know, but they said it was to do because the price of bronze had gone up, and that's why they had to pay the extra $6,000. No, I'm just saying, like, if you're gonna look after my money.
Yeah, but if you're going to come and give us a hearsay, we have an opportunity to reply to that, so. To reply to that.
All expenses relating to that project were passed via resolution of council. I believe there was an extra that was done relating to that project, and I believe that came to council for a resolution at that point in time. So staff did not do anything without council's authorization relating to that project.
Okay. Any other questions? Moved by Councillor Tower.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Let the clock show it was 10:30.